Yeah, man, I think we should be live right about now. So shout out to everybody in the building. If y'all can hear my voice, I guess we ain't gonna do no big intro here. You know what it is. You see the title. Got my brother Infinite Plane Society with me. He got a list of stuff he gonna be going over with y'all. And we're gonna be talking more about the North Pole and the Mercator maps and getting deep into some information on this deception, man. So I ain't gonna hold him no more longer because the brother was going in with some profound information. I'm gonna just kind of let him pick up because he the one with the list over there. So I'm gonna let him take over from there. Shout out to y'all and shout out to you, Tim. Thank you for coming through, brother.
Hey, thanks, bro Sanchez, for having me on. Yeah, I always go to your channel for good content. I remember when I first started speaking on these topics, specifically about my contention that the space program is just another mask for the Roman polytheist, is the NSA.
Yeah, it had to be something. We just dropped off, but we back on, and the brother gonna pick right back off just on the last part where you was before I said, hold up a second. We
Sure.
reconnected.
Okay, so yeah, so the other night, I'm actually I'm talking with some individuals with the Exploring Again thing. Go to exploringagain.com. This is a group of people who are basically realizing that, the debate's the debate. You can sit and debate all day, but what if you ask the question, well, what if we're right or what if we're wrong? We're not going to know because we don't have enough information. We need investigation. We need exploration. So we start looking into stuff, and I'm taking a second look at the North Pole. And I remember there was this Mercator map where it had the North Pole marked by this giant, like black magnetic mountain or something. So I remember that particular map, and I'm like, wait, that's Mercator's map. The guy who gave us the map that we're all used to also had this North Pole thing that's completely different than what you see today. You go to Google Maps today, and there's just a big hole up there. There's nothing there. And so as I dig into this, I find out that Mercator was advised by John Dee. And I never would have put these two together. And John Dee, if you're not familiar, was the court astrologer to Queen Elizabeth. He was a spy, the original 007. And he was someone who was known to practice magic, like summoning, whatever you want to call them, angels, demons, black mirror, candles, seances, and all that stuff. And he was apparently, and this is his own records, John Dee is apparently communicating with these angels who are telling him how he can take over or dominate the world. John Dee actually coined the term British Empire. British Empire came from this guy, a magician. And so this magician is an advisor to Mercator over the polar exploration. And so the Mercator map has that big magnetic thing in the middle. It has that interesting configuration of these like 4 areas with rivers leading inward. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, that's not something we should ignore if it turns out that the very globe itself and the person who was advising all the major voyages of exploration was being advised by the father of Western occultism, John Dee himself. I mean, Aleister Crowley and everybody you hear about from the 20th century, they were following in Dee's footsteps. So now I'm looking at, I guess you could say, what are the occult origins of the globe? Is the globe itself more than a map? Is it a spell? I think it's stuff worth looking into. John Dee and Mercator.
Yes, and I'm gonna tell you right now, when you say about these guys being able to channel information from different dimensions and other realms, I'm gonna tell you that shouldn't be pseudoscience if you really into this consciousness community by now. Because hey, when it comes to astral projecting, this may sound crazy. I don't want to really go off into astral projection. We're gonna stay on subject, but one thing I thought about, Tim, I was like, how was the ancients able to make some of these maps, man? And they didn't have flight or some of the technology they said we have. Well, one thing we know, they had the technology we had. That's one thing. That's why they was able to do it. But another thing, the ancestors were astral projecting. I believe a lot of people who astral project say all the time how they able to stand above the earth and look down and do this and that. Hey, what if, these great ancestors we speak about who made a lot of these maps even before Mercator, because that's what got me. When you look at the Mercator map, he's spot on with the Pygmy, the Dogon, whoever this Mercator was. His map shows what the ancients say, and that is something we can't ignore. That answer all the questions, where we come from, our origins, some of the big $1 million arguments going on now. And the simple answers we come with just get laughed at. Are you serious, guys? The North Pole. So yeah, this is deep. Another thing I want to say is I think a lot of maps could have been made by astral projecting. I don't want to really go there because a lot of people may not want to go there with me. You know, that they might think that's kind of pseudoscience, but astral projection is real. And if the ancients was masters at it, hey man, you can hover above the earth and draw what you see from the astral realm and draw it right into the real realm. And I know this is true because I astral projected once, and you take your memory from the astral dream back into your body when you wake up, just like you do in any dream. So you can wake up and draw these maps and go back into that meditation state, do some more drawing, go back in, do some more drawing. Hey man, that people may say that's pseudoscience, but that's one of my beliefs. Take over it, Tim. What you think?
Yeah. To your first point, John Dee was a scientist. So he was a scientist. He was a royal advisor. He was an astrologer, but he was also an occultist. And so what we call the occult just means hidden. And what do scientists at the cutting edge do every day? They're working to unveil what we can't see, what we don't know. They're actually the occultists of the day. And so you shouldn't take those two things apart. And I don't think that topics should be, I mean, this is one of the reasons I listen to you, though, is I like topics that are, beyond the accepted parameters, because I think it's the only way to advance this thing forward is asking the what ifs. And so I don't think that's far off. And it's not, if you look into the practices of John Dee and Edward Kelly, their occult practices, one, they were summoning angels and communicate with these things. And the second part of it was what they called scrying. And scrying involved seeing at a distance. It involved what you would call astral projection. And if you look into the modern practices of the Thelemites and the OTO who follow in the footsteps of John Dee, they actually call it astral projection. So you might be onto something with that. I hadn't really considered that before.
It's crazy. People gonna crucify me for this, but that was a time of my life where I was interested in joining the OTO.
Okay, I don't think that's crazy at all. In fact, I think it's great that people are willing to actually get their information firsthand, and they should be, I think that's what we should be doing. Firsthand information, because we can't trust the filtration. And no, I mean, I did that. I joined the Abbey of Thelema almost on a whim, because I was like, well, I'm not content to just read in books about something. I want to see for myself. And so, I did exactly that to see what it actually is. And, it's basically just a Masonic organization, but it's more couched in Egyptian than anything. It's more Egyptian than Judeo-Christian, because Masonry is very much based on Old Testament. But, it's the same structure. It's an initiatory system. You got your degrees, you got your little social network and stuff, a lot of yoga and all that. But I mostly went so I wanted to access the libraries. And that's where I studied John Dee. And I kind of put that information to the side. So I studied Dee and Kelly, Enochian magic, scrying. I studied this stuff in depth. And then I kind of put it to the side. And then just like a month ago, I'm taking a look at the Mercator map, John Mercator, and I find out that from the time that John Dee was like 20 until like the end of his life, he was friends with Mercator and advising him on these trips. And I got to thinking, how is this astrologer advising this guy on a voyage to the North Pole? Like, what does he know from back here? And now that I'm thinking about it, you might be onto something. I mean, I don't want to necessarily, go totally off the rails, but this astral projection topic is fascinating because, or it could be something else too. It's been suggested, and I'm reading a book about it called The Angelic Reformation, and it's about this particular character, and it suggests that, well, maybe a lot of what they're reporting as scrying and astral projection might just be a cover, for, like a cipher for more mundane things. Like maybe the way that they were revealing the fact that they already knew the land that was there is they're pretending that they're getting it, like they're pretending to discover it, like they're parsing it out. But regardless though, it's definitely not something to overlook. This character, and so have you caught up with this TV show called Strange Angel?
No, I haven't
It's been on
caught up with it.
CBS. Okay, a Strange Angel is about Jack Parsons, and he was the guy that one of the founders of JPL, one of the progenitors of modern rocketry, and he was a member of the Thelema organization. He was a student of Aleister Crowley, and he was one of the guys who was pretty much, they say, one of the guys that helped put us on the moon because of his innovations in rocketry. But at the same time, he was an occultist. So I find this all very fascinating when you find out that the people who are there to shape our concept of the world and the universe are all a part of this same clique. And what is that clique? When it comes down to it, what is Thelema and what is the space program? And I'm saying it's the same thing. And what it is, it's Mystery Babylon. You know, the rocket is an obelisk.
Hey,
Like,
ooh, that's so deep. It's deep because when you say the rocket is an obelisk, when you think of how the obelisk was kind of like a landmark in the ancient community back then, where they used it to navigate through the town, of course, the same way you would if you was in a new city. You would use the nearest landmarks and stuff, but also the way the shadows of the obelisk hit the ground, you can actually tell time, all of this stuff, and the spiritual things that they used it for. But the crazy thing is where it's deep, because when you say the rocket is the obelisk, that is powerful, because I have even heard people say that, we in a society of phallus worship. Let me quit beating around the bush. Let me just open up my mouth and just talk. Damn it, the people in charge worship the phallus. That's what the obelisk was. And the crazy thing about it is the rocket is the new obelisk. Is all phallus worship. If you look at the wings at the bottom, that's your balls, man. And when it blasts off into the darkness, it's penetration. You call it sex magic, man, and that's exactly what it is, because basically the only way you can describe this cosmos without, you got to think about this. The ancients didn't use big ass rockets and do all that to describe this cosmos. They looked at themselves to see what the earth was on a macro level. And I think that's profound, because when they looked at man and woman, they saw sun and moon. They saw the two halves of the DNA strand. And that's why I got this picture of the Mercator map next to the sail, because the placement of the North Pole on the Mercator map would be exactly where DNA is located on the sail. And a lot of sail earthers are saying this, but they ain't quite. I think Flat Earth got it, man. I think we got it, because we tying all these models together when you look at it. This is sail Earth that we actually teaching y'all right now, because the North Pole at the center would definitely be the DNA, or the tree of life. And that's what I was going over in that last live stream, when I was saying that these maps of the Earth are the Earth's biological makeup. Just like when we was playing Operation, and you had all of these organs inside of this body, you had to put them in the right place. What if you bought that game and it didn't come with all the pieces? You'll never win the game, because you don't have all the pieces. Well, when you was born, they took some of the pieces off the map, and the missing puzzle pieces. If you think about a puzzle piece and then look at the Dogon Conunga, and look at the Mayan cosmos, which they call in the Mayan sun calendar today, you will see that the Conunga, the Mayan symbol of the cosmos, shapes exactly like a puzzle piece. A puzzle piece is actually sacred geometry of the Conunga. Think about what I'm telling you. It's a double trident. When you look at a puzzle piece, it looks just like DNA. And the missing link is truly that. It's a missing puzzle piece, an ancient symbol that would be a puzzle piece today, called a Conunga, and that's the missing link. And it's very deep. This stuff will make the hairs on your skin stand up when you fully grasp what I'm telling you, because the missing link, or this tower, when they said that the tower was knocked down in the Bible, that they said that God got mad, right? And God knocked the Tower of Babel down, and he made the people not understand each other. The Tower of Babel was the secrets of the North Pole. Every human on earth at one point had a symbol for the North Pole, and the North Pole had its own language that connected us all beyond our language barriers. But when they knocked down the Tower of Babel, that was them going around the world on crusades, destroying all the information of this symbol, of this DNA symbol. DNA don't look like a fucking number 8 under a microscope. I don't know if y'all know that. This symbol that you getting of this coiled up little hourglass, it's an ancient symbol that represents DNA on a micro level, and you can also see it on a macro level. But this is not what DNA look under a microscope, people. This is an ancient symbol that represents the earth. I'm finna pass the mic back to IPS, but I'm gonna end on this, right? The missing link is real deep because we playing a game without all the pieces. That's why we ain't been winning at all. You can't win till you go off the board. Today we call that going off the map. You say when you get conscious, I want to go off grid. Going off grid ain't what you think, buying a survival kit going in the woods. Really, when you got salvation and go off grid back in the day, you go beyond places on the regular maps that they teaching the slaves about. If you go by the modern day maps that they teach you in school, you only seeing 25%, if that, of the earth. It's so much land off there, and some of these people they telling you dying ain't dying. They dying in this world to be born off grid in another continent. So they just going, you know, a lot of these people, they in societies and shit. They want to go to some of these other lands. They probably met a woman over there. You don't know about this land. And they leave their whole family. Their whole family think they dead. These people got a whole nother family on another continent. Stuff I'm saying now I get laughed at now, but in the future it'll be normal talk. Hey man, you know about the other continents? And it's us flat earthers at the forefront of reopening the map again, showing you that, hey, the reason we got so many questions because we missing puzzle pieces from the puzzle. When you look at a map today, so much missing, just like the Christians, they asking so many questions because when you look at a Bible today, look how many books they took away from the Bible. Now, if they took that many books away from the Bible, what make you think they giving you the right maps with everything on it? Let me stop talking and let my brother take back over.
That's a great point to end on. It's like you trust, you recognize, okay, that they're hiding stuff in every other area of life. Why do you think that you can trust them in this particular area? I have the same problem with whenever people recognize, oh, well, it's fake news. Yeah, I'm not going to watch the fake media. But then whenever there's a shooting or a terror attack, they act like it's real. And it's like, wait, you can't trust them just whenever there's a body count, but then recognize that they're fake the rest of the time. I'm sorry. It's like pathological liars lie all the time.
Yeah.
But no, but about the rockets and stuff, you know, we're talking about iconography. So you're looking at the rocket and phallic worship, and yeah, it is. It really is that. In fact, even the ceremony of dragging the rocket across the ground or parading around missiles in North Korea, it's all the same. So they get you to genuflect before the symbol of their power, whether you're praying to the obelisk at St. Peter's Square, or whether you're praying to the SpaceX rockets, because you believe in capitalism and entrepreneurship. And of course, SpaceX is space sex. Or if you're worshiping, the Cape Canaveral rockets going up, whatever it is, in some way they have you recognizing the glory of the state, the power of the market, or the fear of the enemy and his big nuclear warhead, which is just another obelisk. So in every one of these instances, even without recognizing it, you're actually genuflecting before their main idol, whether in terror or in respect. And of course, that's the savior. So here's where I take the analogy. They used to say that the world is fallen and the flesh is fallen and that we're all sinners and we need to be saved. Well, who saves you? The sun god with his obelisk, right? Well, now they tell us the world is doomed because of pollution. So who's going to save us from a world dying of pollution? The obelisk. Elon Musk's rocket that's going to take us to Mars, his space ark. They actually call it the ark. And so I'm looking at Elon Musk and the space program as now the new saviors. They're going to save us from world catastrophe. So now, is it a coincidence that the saviors of today also have obelisks? No, it's not. They just replace sin with pollution. It's like a blueprint.
You sure know, right? Yeah, it's deep stuff because when you think about like the Elon Musk, the Neil deGrasse Tysons, man, you just dropped the dead on the head. These are your saviors. It's deep because when I was into the Bible, um, you had these sort of gate guards, even that the Bible spoke of. They call them Pharisees, Sadducees. And it's like always this red and blue. You got Democrat, Republican. You got your creation scientists, then you got your evolution scientists. But at the end of the day, they all serving the same beast. You got Christianity and Islam. It's like they funneling all of your questions back to this same damn uh heliocentric model. When you think about it, man, that's what religion is. Think about it, right? The reason flat earth's so important, because it ain't about the shape of the earth. This gonna really hit a lot of people in the wrong way, but think about what I'm saying. It's about the shape of the creation. Because think about this, right? To understand the shape of the creation is to now understand the shape of the creator. Now, they tell you that the shape of the creator looks just like whatever culture that's dominating. I mean, if you in a European dominated land and the shape of your creator is, a white guy, blue eyes. If you in the Middle East, hey, you look like Allah. You in Asia, your creator may shape like an elephant, or it may shape like a four-armed lady. For the most part, it'll shape like a fat guy named Buddha, and he's Asian. But they say we was made in the image of the creator. I do believe that we're made in the image of the creator. That's why the human body is similar to the same symbols that the ancients used for the earth. The earth is a pentagon just like the body. But we talking micro, macro, but what I'm saying is these shapes are the language of God. When you talk about sacred geometry, these shapes are the foundation of all your mathematics. So you understand when you reach the higher studies of math, they bring the shapes into it. There's a study of math called geometry, and geo is talking about the earth. So when you deal with sacred geometry, you dealing with the sacred shapes and the numbers of the cosmos. You can't see infinity, but there's an equation for it. And the crazy thing about it is they got us with the wrong equations today. The crazy thing about everything I'm saying is it's all about the shapes of the earth, and which is the shape of the creator. We don't know the nature of the creator because there's a barrier between us and the creation. In other words, the creator is the entire creation. And to understand what the creator is, you got to study the creation. So no human has really had a real relationship with the creator because our understanding of its creation has been corrupted.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I say we can't really have a perfect model. We can't know everything because everything it's beyond the capacity of any one perceiver. And so you have all these different competing religions selling us on a total package for everything, a total explanation. And heliocentrism and in modern astrophysics is just the latest iteration of an old system of telling you from the priesthood, oh, we've got an explanation for everything, but you got to come to us for it. So they try to monopolize truth. And I think when they do that, they humanize the creator and they bring it down to a very mundane level where it's a wrathful, jealous thing. And you notice, like the wrath of God is there to punish the sinner. And now today, what have they done? Like everything else, they replace the wrath of God with the wrath of globe. And now it's not to punish the sinner, but it's to punish the polluter, which is the same thing. If the purpose of the church is to reduce sin, and it's not. I mean, the whole purpose of the global warming agenda is to get people to produce less pollution. And what they do is they tax you with carbon taxation in order to incentivize you to pollute less. And this is no different than the selling of indulgences. It's a big shakedown when it comes down to it. But what I'm looking at here is that religions have always been instituted in order to replace a legitimate direct connection with the creator and to have it mediated, and then to have the middleman be able to take a cut, to tithe. It's a money-making operation, and it's just another form of monopoly. And I think it's based upon creating a fundamental misunderstanding of the nature of man and our connection to the universe. Like you're talking about this connection. I'm like, well, like alchemy. You look at alchemy. How many times do you see the sun and the moon, on these various like Masonic trestle boards, or they're combined in eclipse? Well, if you look at like Carl Jung, he was something of an alchemist. And so the moon symbolizes the lunar side of the consciousness. The moon symbolizes the unconscious, whereas the solar would be your linear thinking, your left brain. So the moon would be like right brain. I mean, this is very simplified, but sun is left brain. And that the idea here is that you're navigating at night when it's dark. And that requires past experience and memory. It requires a bit of augmentation by your imagination to navigate so you don't trip and fall. In the light of day, you can pretty much just rest assured because everything's right, easy to see. You don't even need to think about it. You don't need to watch your step. And the idea is that there are two modes of perception, and that the lunar side is the side that relies on intuition and imagination. And then the other side is just the literal, what's right in front of you, what can be measured. And so in alchemy, the idea is you use the left brain and right brain as models for two modes of thinking, and how do you synthesize the two? How do you shine a light of logic and reason and science into the unconscious and understand what's actually down there and correlate the contents? And that's what alchemy has always been about. It wasn't really lead into gold, but it was transformation of consciousness. And you do it by looking into the shadow, and that's what Jung was all about. But I think in a very real way, there's a reason why we have the term lunatic. And to me, a lunatic is somebody who's totally controlled by the delusions or the imagination, the augmentations to reality, versus somebody who would have who's connected to reality, who only perceives what's there, no augmentations. So like on this topic, for example, of flat Earth, people could say you're delusional. And I would say, no, actually, if you're saying the Earth is flat, you're saying it because you perceive it as such. You're not adding anything. You're not adding a spin. We only perceive it as flat and stationary. Nobody can dispute that. So it's the ones who are saying that it's spinning and it's round who are augmenting it. And so what I'm suggesting is that the more augmented your reality is by explanations that you can't perceive, the less your reality is actually real, the more surreal it is, the more fake it is. So if you believe in every terrorist attack, every scenario of doomsday, with whether it be asteroids or space junk or aliens, if you believe in terrorists, if you believe in all this stuff, there's a point where you're no longer in reality. You're filled up with delusions. You're a lunatic for all intents and purposes. But since everybody else is, nobody notices. In fact, this society awards you. It actually gives you, you get props for being scared of all the right things, for calling out the threats.
Yep.
They pat you on the back if you're you're crying wolf. Like you could build a huge YouTube channel just scaring people about the clouds. There's all this poison coming from the sky, chemtrails. Whatever your thoughts on chemtrails, if you have 200,000 subs and you only talk about chemtrails every day, well, I think you have an obligation to use your platform to do something about it and actually find out what's up. I mean, at some point, it's like crying wolf shouldn't be rewarded. I think we should be rewarding actual investigation.
And that's a fact. Because you got some of the biggest conscious platforms today built their foundation off crying wolf. Look at your Alex Jones. He always got this energy of get ready, man. It's about to go down, man. And if you're not ready, man, I'm telling you, get ready. Listen, let me tell you something right now, okay? Because you better get ready now. And I've been in this conscious community for years under that energy. Man, I remember at one point we was getting, they was saying get survival kits with the Y2K shit. Look, it's just been so much shit. It's people got MREs in their garage and shit. It's motherfuckers out there that's really preparing for a real alien invasion. It's just, you'll be surprised how, what's real today, like you said, it's the illusion. And the person that has the facts would be the one they call the delusional one. That's crazy because delusion is like you out of the illusion. You know what I mean? But
that's good. Yeah, that's out of the Plato's cave. You're right. You're disabused of the illusions, and then they consider you to be the crazy one. And Eric Fromm, he's a socialist writer, but he's got some good stuff. He wrote a book called The Sane Society, and his whole premise was, what does it really mean if you're well adjusted to a profoundly sick society? And then what does it mean if you're in a very sick society and you don't fit in? The definition of sanity is almost very relative when it comes to the macro level of, if your entire society is based on delusion and lies and you reject it, they're going to outgroup you. They're going to call you an apostate, a thought criminal, a heretic, but a witch. You have these witch hunts going on every day, and it's like, well, um, I've always been interested in hearing what outsiders have to say. That's what brought me into this area anyway. I could care less what Fox has to say. I know it's all just Tide Pod reality, Tide Pod government brainwashing detergent for the masses. We all see through that. And so here we are on YouTube, because we're getting real information. We don't, I look at the CIA as an extension of just the mind control apparatus. And so I've been thinking what we really need is a DIA, decentralized intelligence agency, and that's us. We already are the DIA, and we are closer to reality than any of their intelligence agencies because they are there to blind us, and they hate what we have, and that's why they shut down our channels when we discuss certain topics.
That's a fact. It's deep because they got us addicted to fear. And I know we hear that a lot, but man, when I say we're addicted to fear, fear is equivalent to wisdom today. So when people show up on the channel, somebody telling them like how archons is going to take control of them and like all of this reptilian shit, them are your wizards today. That's the people, man, listen, motherfuckers got degrees to talk about aliens. But the people who saying, look, man, look where the North Pole is and where the compass is telling us to go, we get laughed at. If y'all don't see how far gone we are with this ancient science of this flat earth, that ought to show you. But what I'm saying about channels building their foundations off fear, you can't find a community that haven't done this. It started with the Bible first. In order for you to follow the God in the Bible, you got to be what? A God-fearing person. In order for you to follow the God of science, you got to be what? A science-fearing person. You need to be scared of man, global warming. If you're smart and intelligent, you would fear a future meteor strike. If you were smart and you were intelligent, you would fear overpopulation and think towards, sustainable depopulating solutions if you were smart, today. That's how they, got us. So the person that's promoting the fear got all of the degrees. Look at your Black conscious community. I got to throw this in here real quick. They promote fears of takeover. Caveman, the white man is a devil. You need to be scared of this. The infiltration, these militia groups training, they getting rid. Everybody got a fear doctrine because you'll pay your money to get rid of that fear. That fear is what keeps you enslaved. But see, the whole thing about a revolution is getting past the fear of the whole indoctrination of saying like, okay, what Flat Earth is doing is saying, well, what if everything they saying is wrong? And when you start right there, you'll start doing a research for yourself to find out the rest is bullshit. But in a nutshell, so I just won't keep blabbering on here, we want to tie all of this into the Mercator map real quick because IPS, what's going on right now is huge arguments about human origins. And I was just doing a lot of research on human origins, and I found out that this is what Flat Earth represent, the real human origins coming from Meru. And that will end all this quote unquote global deception because the whole divide and conquer was based off hiding the original origins of humanity. And when they said, well, you was first and you was first, that's what created like sort of the shit what we call races and what's going on today. One way I explain this shit is if what the ancients saying is true, there was only one race from the center. All life started from the center and raced outward like a ripple effect. If you drop a rock in the water, I know you probably heard me say that. But on a globe, it's not the case. It's a diversity coming from a primitive life form. But this has the origins of where humans come from tied up into it. They say that you came from a primitive single cell, single life form. But when they say a single life form that created everything we see, they still in ancient science, right? Because that single life form was called a point of singularity. That's the North Pole. It's the primordial source. And when you say prime, you're saying one, premier, you know. And the crazy thing about it is that's the single source. So this what you see how science just flip all of this stuff around, man.
Yeah, they do. And now that you bring it up, I'm thinking about it, how they're appropriating ancient sources. So what I think they're doing is they're presenting an exoteric version of astrophysics and science for the masses that give them the mundane heliocentric explanation. But I think the inner initiates are given the actual doctrines about what they actually know about our origins. So I actually think all that is there to be known that we're trying to find out is known. It's just compartmentalized. Somebody's got the maps that we want. Somebody has the history, the records that we ought to access, and it's definitely being kept from us. And we were talking about like communities that have various fears and doomsday scenarios. And I think one of the ways that they keep us from asking these big questions is they keep us in states of fear, so that we're in a fight or flight mode, and it keeps us from, being able to think about these bigger questions. And that's part of their agenda, is keep you in the now with sirens, with terror attacks, with instability, with school drills. I mean, active shooter drills themselves, my new contention here is that the point of the drills isn't to take our guns. It's to give the state an excuse to physically terrorize kids K through 12 so they hate guns and they obey the state. It's to give them Stockholm syndrome so that they hate the state's enemies, who are the gun owners. But I mean, even flat Earth, one thing I like about this conversation and this topic is that when you start looking at what's real and what's not real, you start finding out that many of the bad things that we hear about never happened, or nobody died and it was staged. So you find out that there's less to fear after all. We don't have to fear global warming. The sky's not going to fall unless you believe in Skyfall. Have you heard of Skyfall 2018?
No, I haven't heard of Skyfall, but I actually did a video last year about Skyfall talking about the North Pole, so that's deep.
Okay, well, I came across this thing the other day. I didn't know about it, but there is this, it's a flat Earth convention, but they believe that the dome is going to crack and the glass is going to fall and it's going to open up, and that there's going to be a revelation in the sky, and they're calling it Skyfall. And the reason why I find this interesting, though, is that I wanted to go to the conference and I looked into it, but you can't go in unless you are a biblical literalist and you believe that it's the inerrant word of God. And I don't trust a government-approved man-made document to represent the creator. So I wouldn't be invited. I couldn't go because I'm not a hardcore believer. And they also believe that the non-believers will be punished, and that the believers will be raptured and they'll be given spirit bodies and immortal bodies sent back down to fix the earth. And so this is a doomsday thing that has become attached to flat Earth somehow. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't hear anything about the dome cracking and falling until Skyfall. And so I'm thinking, is this something that we really need? Like, do we need another the sky is falling doomsday prophecy to take something that opens up minds to inquiry and turns it into more fear? Do we need our own Al Gore to tell us the sky is falling, another Chicken Little? I don't think so. I don't believe the dome's going to crack, and anybody trying to sell me on an expensive ticket to hear about how the dome's going to crack is passing off. They're prophesizing like they're false prophets. I'm telling you. Anybody telling you the dome's going to crack is a false prophet. Hashtag prove me wrong. Because I'm sorry, it's obnoxious to me that somebody can claim to know something like that and claim to have some kind of initiated interpretation of these texts and know, oh, that the sky is going to crack and it's going to fall. And they use that fear to galvanize a group of people who are sworn on a statement to have faith that the Bible is literal and that the non-believers will be punished. It's like, that's pretty hateful. That's like the Westboro Baptist Church. God's going to roll out the outpouring of his wrath on everybody else, but we're saved because we hate all the right people. We can just watch the wicked be judged. I think it's very hateful. I think doomsday cults in general need to go. I think they're not justified. I would even say that the mainstream media is a doomsday cult. I would say modern science is a doomsday cult, and Stephen Hawking, one of the worst doomsayers of all time. He said, you're going to die of overpopulation or global warming. Or if you go to space, aliens will kill you. And if you survive the aliens, guess what? The universe is going to implode. So you're dead either way. And I'm like, man, that's about as nihilistic and hateful and anti-life as you can get.
Yeah, it definitely is. I was muted for a second there. I had to unmute my mic. I was trying to find something for you when you were speaking about these doomsday guys. And what they doing, they're taking ancient concepts and they're putting fear to them. So like the serpent is something that one of the hugest fears of the day. People got a fear of snakes. You go back to the ancient day and the snake was a very revered animal, representing the sine wave. But it's like all of the mysteries and beautiful knowledge that would give us the answers to this life and this earth. They put the doomsday on it. They put a fear stigma on it to keep you away from it. So Satan got the trident. But the Mayans said that the great mother had the trident, at the center of the earth and all of that. But you find out that the word scared and the word sacred sound similar. And it's strange because a lot of things that was once sacred, they got us scared of today. You talk about these doomsday communities, how they attach fear on ancient symbolism that would really free us if they didn't attach that fear on it. Think about this. The whole thing with I was just, damn it slipped my mind. These fear, one thing that they corrupted, I was finna bring up, the Skyfall concept you was talking about. Man, listen, it's deep because the ancestors taught in so many ways that at the North Pole, the sky actually fall to create a dark tower. I got some collages and I got a couple of screen shares I can show y'all to show you how that would work so you don't think I'm crazy, but this is actually something I truly believe in. And I can go deep into that Skyfall concept, but I'm going to pass the mic real quick and we can kind of bounce back and forth because I'm all over the place.
No, the Skyfall thing's new to me and I'm interested in it. I was just surprised that somehow somebody managed to give a bad ending to Flat Earth. I saw Flat, because here's the thing. The entire paradigm that we're in, the fact that it's divorced from reality and all that, it's because the scientific methodology was kind of taken out of our hands and replaced with a lot of pseudoscience and scientism, a lot of explanations, a lot of fallacies, like gravity used as a God of the gaps divine fallacy to explain things that they don't have an explanation for. So they put the model first and then used facts to back it up. So, this has been a problem for a bit. So there has been a war on science from the beginning. I would say there's been a war on science forever. And that the extent to which we got out of the last dark age, the extent to which we've had any kind of elevation in our standard of living and improvement in our general conditions and in our knowledge base is a result of the scientific methodology being liberated from those who would keep us in the dark. And so we're not at war with science. Science is what gets us out of this thing. Fake science is what got us into these deceptions. And so what I think this whole conversation is about isn't geography. It's about philosophy, epistemology, and perception. And it's about us seizing the means of perception. So it's basically taking the responsibility for thinking for ourselves because we have been served a lot of garbage for a long time, just out of habit and tradition. And, earlier today, we were talking about this big deception, how it's like you can live in a fake reality if you believe everything you see on TV. And, I'm reminded, I wanted to run this by you. There was this TV show called Space Cadets on the UK. And out there, this TV show had these people who were told that they were going to be astronauts. So they get into a spacesuit, they get into a spaceship, and for a number of weeks, they're on this reality TV show where they think they're in low Earth orbit, like the ISS or something. But the whole thing's a movie stage. It turns out later, half the people in the spaceship were actors. The other half were the dupes. And the dupes were chosen because they were gullible. They were selected to be on the show because they were easily influenced by what other people thought about them. And they didn't have a lot of inhibition. So they chose people, like they basically filtered out certain attributes that would make them easy dupes. And the funny thing is, the audiences were watching this TV show. where these people are convinced they're in space and the audience is laughing at them. Meanwhile, I see people like Elon Musk laughing when he sent that car into space, saying, oh, well, obviously, it looks fake because it's so real. Well, to me, I think that we're being laughed at the way that the audiences are laughing at those dupes on that TV show. That the ones who constructed this illusion have a masterful system for keeping us in an immersive illusion. And I think 90% of it is peer pressure. Because that show Space Cadets, if there were 10 people who were duped, they would have figured it out. Somebody would have asked a question. And what the 5 actors were doing, their job was to keep those who weren't in the know from talking to each other. So the 5 dupes on the show Space Cadets weren't able to have conspiracy theories about what might actually be because they were constantly interrupted. And it kind of reminds me of YouTube, how when you're having conversations like this, sometimes you'll get floods of chat trolls who seem to have no other objective than to stop people like us from having conversations.
Yeah, it's distraction. Yeah, It ain't worse as it used to be.
Now, so I've been thinking about the term religion, by the way, because one of the first things you and I talked about, this was like last year, is about how religion has caused some people to stop thinking. And so my definition of religion is now divorced from spirituality altogether. When I think religion, I think regimented worldview. So religion is a worldview that's been defined for you. So you go through your K through 12, you go through college, you believe the MSM, you believe in everything you saw on a green screen. Well, that's your religion. And the media, to me, is the state church. That Bill O'Reilly, Megyn Kelly, Rachel Maddow, Limbaugh, these are your priests and your pastors of different denominations, just basically telling you what the elites want you to know, what the authorities say is your daily news. And they don't like you taking your information from conspiracy theories because those aren't in the book. Those are apocrypha or non-canonical texts. And it's all about controlling the narratives of the day, this state church, which is the media. So, lately I've just been looking at this concept of, how religion constrains people from looking at things for themselves. And earlier you were talking about how you have all this ancient wisdom and ancient symbols that are being demonized by biblical literalists. So, for example, you're talking about the symbol of the serpent. Well, it happens to be the case that you couldn't go to the Skyfall conference if you're not a biblical literalist because in their view, what you talk about is evil. If you talk about anything other than straight up biblical spirituality, from that perspective, you're considered to be pagan. And that's one of the things that I have a problem with when it comes to religions, is that they're not content to have their own vision. They have to destroy everybody else's.
It's a fact, and they would call me pagan today, but really it would be more like Megan, because pagan would be patriarchal centered. That's what we once called heliocentrists, but they flipped all the words and terminology against us. So the witches were the real scientists, but now they the pagans today. See, back in the ancient day, if you was a witch, you understood medicine. Man, you understood every plant in that forest. You was bright, like you had degrees of wisdom about the earth. But when the heliocentrists took over, the witches was called pagans now. And the real pagans are called scientists, which is another word for witch or wizard, would be a scientist. Or when you say a genius, the root word of genius is genes, because the geniuses in the ancient day could tell you the origins or the genetics by talking about the genie. And that symbol, that deity that we call a genie, or that Nagini, that serpent, is the sine wave. And by studying the sine wave, you can understand the origins. By studying the genie, you unlock the genetics of humanity. They want you to think you come from monkeys from space. You're a space monkey. You come from a chimp in Africa that come from a rock that landed in the ocean with some germs on it, and it cooled off to create all of these beautiful, diverse cultures with intricate languages and art forms and music. You got to think that most of the world actually believe that there is no intelligent creator because of the foundation of their science. When we talked about the skyfall earlier, I put up these pictures in front of you so that they won't confuse you. What happened? The dome could never crack, just like water could never shatter. The dome isn't made out of a material that we would call quote unquote physical. The dome is made out of something that scientists are calling dark matter today, because they don't want you to understand that darkness is actually what the creator looked like. Why is that? And what I'm teaching you is facts, what the ancients taught. I ain't pulling this out my side of my head. I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna break it down even deeper what I mean, because we talk about this dark tower at the center of the Mercator map, but we don't know exactly what they mean. This is darkness, y'all. And you got to start, see what it is today. They got everybody worshiping the light. They got you worshiping the sun at the center of of it all. They got you sun gazing, nobody moon gaze. They got all about the light. Roy Ayers said, everyone loved the sunshine. It's a message in that song. You make your own light when you enter the darkness, but when you in the sunshine, you blinded by the rays of Ra and all the sun gods. But you are sun god. You are, but you will never be that till you get into meditation and the root word of me. Meditation is the real spiritual medication. Anyway, let me get into this dark tower and what this is. The reason the ancients said that the creator, the most high, the all is simply darkness is because darkness is the only thing you can't measure. I bet y'all just had an aha moment. Let me say that again. You can measure light. You can measure everything else in existence, but the only thing you can't measure is darkness. You can't measure it. Ain't no dimensions to it. You can't tell me what shape the darkness is. It just is. It's omniscient. When you close your eyes and enter the darkness behind your eyelids, there is nothing but infinity. That's why we close our eyes to talk to the Most High, because we going back to that darkness, which is the Most High, simply darkness. That's why you got to go to it in between lifetimes and every night to go to sleep. The deity was called a reaper. It's the repairer. It repair you, reaper, repair. And every soul in and out of lifetime take a trip to this dark mountain. This is your spiritual Hajj. You take it in the flesh. Some Muslims take it to Mecca, to the dark stone, the Kaaba stone. But they telling you what happened in the afterlife, that magnetic vortex at the earth. Your spirit is so light that it can't escape the vortex, just like this blender showing you. If there was some ice cubes in this blender, they would go around and follow the circuit of that vortex, just like the sun and moon and all the stars. This is what the swastika is showing you. So integration is something that the Freemasons and all of them preach against. We know that you got your blacks saying don't integrate with the whites. Whites don't integrate with the blacks. This divide and conquer tactic is why the people ain't been able to rise up. Because when I was in the military, I was a black man who integrated with whites, Mexicans, Asians, and even Indians to go kill other continents in the name of America. But when I got out of the military and went back to try to learn some knowledge about God and ended up in these conscious communities, guess what I learned? Don't trust them white folks. Don't integrate with them with nobody. You got to worry about the black man. Why am I saying all of this? Because without integration, we're doomed. If they're able to get your sons and daughters to integrate in a military uniform, but you're not able to get your sons and daughters to integrate, to speak up to why they poisoning us with chemtrails, overtaxing us, and what's going on with the government deception. If we can't, they're not going to integrate us for us to come after them. They'll integrate your children to go fight for their money and for corporations. They'll integrate you on a job to stock a chef to make a corporation rich. You see black, whites, all races working together at McDonald's. But what they did was they make us get off work and say we'll never integrate to take over the whole damn system. So that's a real prison cell in the mind where they got you saying, yeah, I integrate to keep your shit going in the military. I work a job with the other race, but I won't integrate to stand up for our rights and while we've been deceived. Why am I bringing up integration while talking about sky falling and flat earth? Give me a minute, I'm going somewhere with this. The big world deception was in the beginning, that was only one human race. And for many years, we was taught that it was the African race, or some superior whites teach that that original race was the white race. You even got some Asians that teach, hey man, no, Asians was here first. So you got a superiority complex in every quote unquote race, but that's because no one has ever considered. Think about it. All of this division is based upon cosmology and human origins. If all of these races knew, hey, we're none of us first. All of our ancients taught that every single different human, every race was created at the same time, at the same place, at the center of the earth. We'll stop beefing. Wouldn't be no argument with who first, because we're going by looking at, in the beginning, the Most High already integrated everything. So integration didn't come later after some big bang. I hope y'all see what I'm saying, because they telling you the races was created by integration. That there was this one supreme race that made it with itself and created other races. How can you do that? I don't know. But if you ever stopped and looked, Darwinism, the Big Bang, and all of that is bullshit, because two whites can't make a black baby. Two blacks can't make no dang on Justin Timberlake. Never has happened. Two blacks can make an albino. Two Chinese can make an albino. But everything in nature can make an albino. That ain't white. And for years, they've been passing off blacks creating whites, and when blacks have only created albinos. We ain't producing no George Bush. We ain't producing no European. And this whole DNA genetic testing scam, it's been scientists come out and said that that's a multi-billion-dollar industry based off pretty much taking your blood and printing whatever the fuck they want you to be. You ever thought about that? So this whole human origins and flat earth and the Mercator map is very important while me and my brother doing this discussion.
Man, that's a good point. They present us with things, and then, like, for example, they have a little red dot on a map that, or on a picture of space from the Hubble, and they say, oh, well, this little red dot here represents 7 planets around the TRAPPIST star system that are in a Goldilocks zone that we could go inhabit, and 3 of them have moons that are tidally locked and lots of ice and water. It's like, how do they know off that one little dot? And you find out behind the scenes, all they really have to come up with is, and they've said this before, like some scientist was asked, at NASA, they're like, well, how do you know, or how do you explain how Venus's rotation is going the opposite direction? His explanation was, well, you have to use your imagination to fill it in because we don't have a lot of facts. Like, it's artistry. They openly talk about how they need artistry, 1, to represent it because they don't have enough data, and 2, to make it interesting enough for people to look at it, for entertainment value, in other words. And so in all these different areas, we're putting a lot of trust on what somebody's doing behind a curtain. And we're just hoping or expecting that whatever they're doing is not just some kind of a magic trick. And that's where I think they got us, where if you suspend disbelief and you give them the benefit of the doubt on anything, if you place any faith in one of these experts, they will pull the wool over your eyes. And so that's where I'm saying every one of these experts need to be called, like for example, you get a statue of a dinosaur, or rather a sculpture of a dinosaur in a museum, right? And so some kid sees it. Well, the teacher's not going to tell the kid, oh, that's fake, it's plaster. Or even if they do, they're going to think it's a plaster model of the real thing. What they're not going to know is that all they had was a little chicken bone sized piece of material and some guy's imagination that constructed this big beast, and then they had it made. It's science fiction. They've never had an intact Tyrannosaurus Rex skull found anywhere. And yet they don't tell the kids. And so they kind of present us with these fantasies, and they let us accept it just through osmosis. They don't even have to overtly lie to us. And as long as we have their trust and we never ask, why would they lie? Well, they're going to sell us a whole bill of goods. And now here, I think one of the greatest accomplishments of the space program has been to convince a lot of people that it might be a good idea and a sign of progress if we could all just move to Mars, where we have to exist as farmers, farming potatoes under a dome. Like, what is that to you? I mean, tell me, how is that not the same thing as living in a gulag in Siberia?
It is,
Just instead, it's the same thing.
man, it's deep that you're talking about going to Mars to live on a dome and all that, how they create these dome worlds like on the moon and stuff while denying that we inside of a terrarium here. That's deep, you know what I'm saying? They deny that we're in a dome, but then the only thing they can reduplicate to sustain life on these so-called other worlds is a dome structure, because they know that we're in a contained environment.
So, what do you think about? What do you think we would find if we just kept going south? You know, remember Admiral Byrd talks about finding another landmass the size of America beyond the South Pole and all that. Do you think that if we keep going, we're going to hit some type of like material barrier or darkness or
Yeah,
what?
well, I'm gonna tell you what I think. I don't think the firmament is a barrier. I think that it's just a bar. So when we say barrier, let's just stop at the first three words. It's a bar. It's a step. Like you have to take each step to go up your steps in the house, and that's what I think it is. I think it's just a barrier, or a bar. But I don't think that it's blocking us from accessing what's beyond it. And I do think that there are many, many, many. I think we're on an infinite plane, and the further you go south, you may leave this bar and enter another barrier. What I'm looking at Earth is what we're calling a world, is a bunch of land masses surrounding a pole, like a bunch of ships at a dock or a bunch of bees surrounding a queen bee. The continents we on are living creatures. The ground you walk on is alive. That's why you put shit in it and it grows. So all of these continents are living creatures moving in an infinite ocean, and they all are attracted to these poles. That's how we get these 7 continents we got around the North Pole, but there's many around us and many around them. And then you do reach a point where it stops, and then I think it's a bunch of just ocean until you reach the edge of another barrier and got to work your way from the outside to the inside of that ripple effect. I hope I'm painting a good picture in my mind. I think there's a bunch of ripple effects across an endless, infinite ocean. And each of the ripple effects have a world starting from the point of impact where the rock is, creating a pole, and then every ripple outward to the end one is just that world. I think it's like Saturn. A bunch of Saturns across an infinite ocean, and all of the different rings is a different world, and we in one right now. Now, I do think you can go amongst and travel how you want to, but I think when you reach a bar, or what we call in a torus field or an ice ring, we got them as ice rings. I do think that these bars or these barriers, there is some kind of, you can't just go into this other ring. I do think that your body got to be built to pass over. And the religions teach us about that you can't just be initiated to the next world till you get your body right, learn to fast, do this and that. I don't think it's a barrier. I think nature is protecting us for trying to cross through to this other world, because you'll die if your health ain't built for the great passing over. And I think that these religious ceremonies of the Passover is really us passing through these ripples or these bars, traveling in amongst these worlds. Because when you leave one ring and go to another one, you actually leave in a different sun and moon system. So your body will be affected, some kind of way by just coming from this world and then crossing over to a whole nother damn sun and moon system. I'm pretty sure that the ancients trained their bodies some kind of way through fasting or something before they just went through these areas, just like the astronauts say, okay, we got to train and get ready before we can go into this other moon world, because the conditions is different from the body. They telling us the truth, but in a different way. Like, I think, you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, that's good. And you're right. Telling us the truth in a different way. They have an esoteric interpretation for what they're feeding us. And yeah, I do see what you're saying. And interestingly, we were talking about John Dee earlier, and in his cosmology, we are surrounded by what he called ethers, like 30 ethers, and that to pass through each one, you have a systematic degree system to prepare you for what's there. I mean, to me, it's all, interesting stuff. I never really understood the practice of it, but he did conceive of the world as being a series of like concentric rings, and he has a map of it. But yeah, no, it's very interesting. Now, do you
Yeah,
think that every one of these areas would have its own sun and moon? Is that kind of like a standard thing? Because someone had said to me, hey, they said, hey, is the Temple of Solomon maybe a reference to like a temple sun moon? That every area around a pole would require that duality? Is that like a feature, you think?
yeah, I think that what's separating these worlds is what I would think about it. We're born into a world where we start counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, I don't know the last number in our numerical system, but I know we got something called infinity, right? If me and you started counting right now, IPS, where you stop counting at and where I stop counting at gonna be different. But we're gonna stop before we get to infinity because I don't know if you'll reach a number that you know what I mean. Basically, let me simplify what I'm trying to say here. Where our numerical system stop and we say, well, that's just infinity. It's only infinity to us, and it's where one begins in the next ring. So I think what separates each of the worlds is scale. That's why they say that giants live on the outer rings. Because if you look at what separate the worlds right here in our little circle of continents here, is scale. We measure things different than other worlds. We got our own measure. I forgot the name of it, but an inch over here ain't an inch in the Middle East or an inch in Asia. Like our architecture is at different scales, and that's what separate the ancient world. Okay, because you got to think about the words we're using. That's what separate the ancient world from the new world is architecture, design, mathematics, scale. And I think that if you look at the scale that the ancients built on, they clearly had a kind of mathematics that dwarfs all of our modern shit today, even with your iPhones and all of that. If you look at the scale that they built on, it's breathtaking. And they carved complete cities and mountain faces, man. You got stones that were worked with that's the size of damn houses. And this is just one stone. That's, and they want to know, how did the ancients build this? They understood something that once we understand it, I think we won't even have to try to physically go to those outer rings. We'll just astral project there. Because I think, real talk, another thing about these other worlds is that we're already existing there asleep. They show us this in movies all the time. They'll wake a person up and they'll say, how long have I been asleep? They'll be like, you've been asleep for 10,000 years. And they didn't know they would sleep that long. So I think that there are many clones of yourself across these different worlds that you may be asleep on. And I think that when we say, man, I got to wake up, I got to get this knowledge so I can wake up, is that you can wake up yourself on these other worlds too. That's just me personally. I'm going into my belief. I like to have these deep talks, but I do think that we can cross over those rings in other ways, like astral projection, like shifting your consciousness to your body that sleep over there. And you'll wake up over there like, hey man, guess what I did in the inner world? They be like, what, man? See, today we call it, hey, guess what I did in my dream last night? But I think when the ancestors spoke, they said, hey, they knew where they was in the dream. They knew what world that body was in. And they say, hey, look what I did in such and such continent in the third ring. I dreamt about this. Go there with me tomorrow when you go to sleep in this world. Follow me with our body in the third world, and let's sip some tea on this continent or that. Hey, I'm just going far-fetched here with my thoughts, but there's obviously more to. I was looking at something about memory on Netflix last night that'll blow your mind. But when we talk about memory, that's what we're looking at with this flat earth model. The more toward the center you go, the more toward the memory, the Akashic records, right? The tree of life. The scientists call it the thing that started the Big Bang. They said you can't make it back to that because the light is deceiving you. That the light you looking at is so many light years already past, and it's dead light, so to speak. I'm trying to be quick here, but there's a point of singularity, and when you go to it, you're going back to the future. So when you think about that term, back to the future, when the further you go back, the more advanced the technology and spiritual systems get. You know what I mean? I always say ain't no secret societies on the lands around the North Pole because they all know the secret. You can only create secret societies when you leave Eden.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I remember this phrase that I heard once because I was asking a Freemason about the lodge architecture and the rituals and what it all means, and they explained that you have your central altar on which you have 3 lit candles, and they represent the 3 directions, and then the 4th one for the north, they don't have a candle. And I said, why do you only have 3 candles lit? Why don't you have a 4th candle? And they said, we don't put a light in the north because the north is a place of darkness. And so I'd never understood, what does that mean? That the Masons consider the north to be a place of darkness, and that they leave the north side of their lodges dark. And I never had an answer for that. And so that's another reason why this idea of what you're talking about with the North Pole really kind of resonates with me right now, because it's really not in what they tell you, it's in what they don't tell you in a lot of these things. And so the regular, the everyday Mason goes to the lodge, he's going to hear that and learn, okay, north is a place of darkness. But the one who's looking for the esoteric is going to say, okay, well, that's a clue. That's not a satisfactory explanation. So what's over there? And the whole point of the lodge is to leave the darkness. It's to enter the light. It's to find the truth. And so why would they have this like glaring blank spot just thrown in there? And so, yeah, I find the North to be the very concept of, the North Pole to be intriguing right now, because they give you this mundane explanation. Like I was telling you earlier, the guy from exploringagain.com is going to the North Pole and the South Pole in October. And when you start looking into it, it's like, it's just ice or it's just water, and there's nothing there essentially. And I'm thinking, well, there's either nothing there, or I don't know, you've seen the UN flag, right? UN flag, 33 segments. You've got eight segments with 4 in each, and then you've got the center, the 33rd, which is a circle. So I'm thinking the inner circle, maybe there's something there that's being obfuscated. And so even trying to take a trip over there, even though we know we're not going to find out what's actually there, it's worthwhile to go just to see how far you can get to the truth before you're corralled. And so we need to know the perimeters. And so I've been thinking lately that the debate's over in terms of, as far as like what we can actually say that we know for a fact. There are a lot of people who believe it to be, as it's been presented to us, the entire world, the spinning ball, heliocentric cosmology, but they don't know it. It's an article of faith. And so the only way we're going to get past faith and belief is through investigation and exploration. So I'm thinking now that it might be a good time to change the focus from, instead of trying to win over the mainstream media, or instead of trying to debate and convince indoctrinaires to look at our perspective, I think instead our focus collectively should be on getting answers. And to me, that means North Pole and South in any direction. It means, how do we know how deep we can go? We're told 8 miles. There are so many different areas to look at, but as far as it goes, I don't think we're going to solve this puzzle from inside of it. Earlier you talked about off the grid. We're not going to win in the arena of bad ideas. We got to step outside of it. I don't think there's any experiment you can do inside the model that's going to debunk it. I think it's literally going to require going to the edge, whatever that means.
Yep. And I think that's a lot when we say think outside the box. We got to eventually leave outside the box to prove what we're saying. I'm one of the ones that's with it. And because I know at one point, like we sitting here talking about traveling to the North Pole and beyond the South Ring, and we're talking about it like a big, man, this great feat, this mission. And if you think about it, it was simply going from one state to another to the ancients. I really believe that the ancients just they went to the North Pole and these places freely, like, and listen. Their maps were so accurate. They even drew in parts of the ocean that you need to go around because there's sea monsters there. It's like these huge different races of like sea creatures when you go on into making your selling to these other continents. A lot of ancients drew places to go around because they said this part of the ocean got the sea monsters. This and they want people say these maps just mythology and all of that shit, man. These folks who finna go through all the trouble to be making these, they was going to these other lands and they was writing in there things to watch for and all that, map legends. And if you look at the UN flag that you told us to bring up, this is the box that they telling us to think outside of. Like, that reef represent a military barrier. Yeah. And that's to keep your mind stuck into these 7 little continents when the ancient maps show lands that go way beyond. But if you think about the symbol that they use to make the barrier around this map, it's the symbol of the Caesar. It's a Caesar's wreath. That's Rome, what we call Greco-Egyptian control, And that reef symbol, again, you can see here, it's the eagle and all of that. Somebody got it here. They all on the same team. There is no beef between communist, capitalists, all of this crap. Everybody a member of the UN. But I'm gonna fall back, and because it's a lot to speak about, especially about this dark tower, this North Pole skyfall concept that they corrupting today. I didn't know nothing about this skyfall conference. Basically, what these guys doing, they're hijacking the terminology. So, for example, a couple of years ago, if you went to Google and put in Black Panther, it'll teach you about the Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton and all that. But since they came out with the movie, if you go on Google now and put in Black Panther, Marvel Comics movie gonna come up. So they're monopolizing the terms. The term Skyfall is an ancient concept. And it resonated with me last year. I created a Flat Earth Skyfall video talking about what happens at the North Pole. This is going to be a new thing. All of this stuff, we taking our time to get to it, but you better believe the Flat Earth community, the more we explore this dark tower, we'll begin to see it as the sky falling. I'm one of the Flat Earthers to go into the whole Skyfall concept. I'll touch on it briefly here before we get out of here. But basically, it was said that the sky falls at the North Pole, and that darkness behind the stars actually comes and create a hole into the earth, and that you can't go inside of it, you can only go around it. In sort of a speak, going inside of it would be like waking back up in your own darkness. It's like a portal or something. But this is what the big secret, what I think the secret societies are hiding. And I think this is how got a lot to do with eclipses, moon phases. But that's another subject. Basically, what I want to point out is, to stay on subject, I had this blender up here. And I'm going to pass the mic back so we can, this whole Skyfall thing they doing is ancient. And I think they just taking the term so that when people try to research Skyfall, they won't get the ancient truth. They'll get whatever propaganda they trying to promote under this ancient terminology. They trying to promote new stigma to it. So I think it's called algorithms, where you steal the terminology to lead people the wrong way.
Oh yeah, that's a big tactic. I've seen it used all the time, and it's very, very effective. In fact, I've seen it used so many times where it's like a story comes out and then immediately a bunch of made to order canned PR puff pieces show up that hog that headline. So for example, the weekend of Thanksgiving, Mad Mike Hughes had that rocket launch planned, which was canceled at the last minute, but he had 5 Associated Press releases that day. So he was one of the #1 stories on the AP for 2017. He was even on the front of the communist newspaper in China, him and his rocket, right? Well, a few days later, Suddenly, a bunch of other stories started showing up about some guy named Mad Mike, who's a motorcyclist no one's ever heard of, and then other phrases of the word Rocket Man talking about North Korea, like Donald Trump talked about North Korea's guy, called him Rocket Man. Elon Musk called himself Rocket Man. So it was almost like Mad Mike got too much press coverage on the Research Flat Earth banner with the phrase Rocket Man, Mad Mike, and within days they buried it. So it went from you would search it and you'd get 10 pages of stuff on Google to it almost got buried. And that's not unintentional. I think it's just it's a standard tactic, and it definitely works. And they're also trying to bury the term crisis actor. And you see what they're always like. I've even seen them play some pretty subtle games where they had this one video called Chatting with a Flat Earther. And this guy is no one you've ever heard of, but somehow he gets on a channel with 2 million subs, and nothing he says makes any sense. And he looks like a drug addict. And so I'm thinking the opposition hired some meth head to run his mouth and pretend to be like an authority on the subject so millions of people would see it and be turned off. It's all subtle manipulation, psychological manipulation, the media, the games that they play.
Yep.
Well, yeah, they know the power of images. And like so, even if you make a really good point, if you look bad and you make a good point, well, a lot of people will judge you on your words. But what about the billions of people who don't speak your language and their first perception of you is just a picture? Or the people who are going to hear about you from a late night talk show host, but who aren't going to hear your words. So, image is huge when it comes to mind manipulation. And the people who have formulated our surreality know, how to present things. They know how to present people they don't like in a negative light and how to present people they agree with in a very positive light.
Hold on, I had my mic muted the whole time I was talking. Let me go wrap this up real quick about the Skyfall.
Yeah.
Um, I think you're gonna find this interesting, Tim. Because you like me, we see NASA as an occult organization. We see them as syncretists, just like us. That's what a lot of people don't know. NASA is their entity in this conscious community. Like, so we talk about the Skyfall. Well, all of the pictures you seeing on the screen now shows you what I mean about the Skyfall. At the North Pole, the darkness was said to create everything. So in the middle of all these maps, you see a dark tower. That darkness is the same darkness behind the stars. So why do you see it on a map? The ancestors said at the center of the earth, the darkness behind the stars fall from the sky and creates a hole in the ground and goes out to the other side to make the lower part of the firmament. You got Sheol, you got the firmament. This darkness is what's creating the toroidal field. What you got is a bunch of light that we call in living reality. All of this grass, water, trees, humans, animals. If you can see it, it'll look like a CD disc. You see how there's a hole in the middle of the CD disc and all the music is on the disc and the disc is a donut. That's what our flat earth is. The middle part is where the pole is spinning the disc. So that ain't a world. It's where the pole is actually spinning the disc. So if you're looking at my screen, if you look at this blender, that's what the North Pole would be. It would be a dark tower. Instead of air being the void, creating a vortex, it will be darkness itself. They call that the ether or the ether. When you say ether, you're saying the air tor. It's a different kind of air than what we're breathing. This is the air that oxygen itself breathes. This is a different kind of water than what we're drinking. This is the water that water drinks because water gets thirsty and it drinks from the dark tower. So this primordial water, this ether, this air that's spinning the toroidal field. When you take the word air and mix it with the word tor, for torus field, you get air tor or aether. And the ether is what's, see, let me show y'all what NASA said a couple of years ago. This is the best way I can explain this to you. I'm gonna show you. I put this website up. I hope you can see this IPS. You can only see it if you go to the internet on YouTube. I'm gonna blow this up. I'm gonna show y'all what I'm talking about. This CD disc we live on. See, NASA told us about this. Check this out, right? What you looking at is something they call donut worlds. Now they said donuts worlds really exist. You know why? Because we living on a damn CD disc. And the reason all compasses point to the center is because that's a huge spinning, man, going on at the center. That's what's spinning the sun and moon around. The ground is still, don't get me wrong, I ain't saying the ground's spinning like a CD. The ground still. The ground represent, let me show you a vinyl record real quick. Vinyl record player real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. The earth is just like this. The ground ain't moving. The record is, but the record ain't the ground in the case of the flat earth. The stars is. So when you look at a flat earth ring map, each ring represent a different star system or different set of sun and moons, like we were saying, or a different song. All right. But all spinning around from the North Pole, just like this vinyl record. So that's why I always bring up the vinyl record, because NASA telling us the same thing Plato was telling us. You look at this thing here, you can see the different grooves in it. Now they got a black hole at the center. That's the dark tower that the ancestors talking about. When you say donut, I always tell y'all that's double nut. The nut is a deity, and doses too. So when you take two nuts and put them together, it create a symbol like what you see in front of you. Two arches stuck together, or two nut and gabs, it'll make a number 8. They taking all these ancient symbols and telling y'all the truth with them, but flipping the truth inside out, because they got you on the surface of the egg instead of inside of it.
Okay, so do you think that, like, we get a lot of imagery, in the media, like predictive programming, you would say, about the glow, about the dome, like The Simpsons or various movies, Thunderdome, where you have a lot of dome symbolism in a lot of movies. And do you think that's because they're revealing the fact that we're in some type of an enclosed system? Or do you think they're showing us that because they want to convince us that we can't leave this area?
I think they doing it to when they show us all of this stuff, to misinterpret the nature of the dome. Because when you see the dome cracking and water spilling out and all of that, that's again like what you were saying earlier with the fear programming. You know what I mean? They taking something that's beautiful ancient science and it's talking about the dome, which is a micro and macro concept, meaning the night sky outside and the stars, we see it as a dome with all the stars going around Polaris. But it's the same thing with the human head. It's capped off with a dome where you access your inner darkness being from the head. You don't escape to darkness through your feet. You go to the darkness with all the organs in the head or the dome, the skull. So one of the secret societies that held this secret was skull and bones. Think about what the skull is, the dome. The bones is the foundation. Those X, that the bones make a X for the 4 lands. The 4 lands, Mount Meru, but also earth, wind, water, and fire, being the foundations that created them first 4 lands. So, but it was born from darkness. So that skull represent darkness. That's why it's above the 4 lands. So when you look at the dark tower on Mercator map, it's hovering above the 4 lands. As flat earthers, we've been taught to look at this as a dark stone floating on the ocean. That's not how you read this map. Mercator, if he knew what he was talking about, he taught what the ancients taught, that dark tower goes all the way up to the sky. That's the tree of life. It's a dark tree because once it get up there, it opens up, just like these deities on a collage show you. That's how we see the sky, because it's like an umbrella rotate. It's like the North Pole is the handle of an umbrella, and all of the constellations and stars is painted inside of the interior of that umbrella. That's while the creator is spinning around. So the creator got an umbrella. and it's holding it at the middle of the earth, and all the stars and the sun and moon, all of that is attached to that umbrella, and a creator is spinning around. That's what we looking at. But you looking at the pole of the umbrella and the trunk being wet spinning is nothing but darkness. This darkness is spinning around our light, spinning around the lights. So it's hard to explain, but NASA did a good job of creating this little deception. I can use their deception to show you what I'm talking about here. If you look at this, right, what's making this donut is darkness. It's surrounded by darkness, and it got darkness in the middle. This how we get terms like "let thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, as above so below," micro, macro. This is the darkness theory. This is the string theory, because everything is sandwiched in between the darkness. You got darkness on the outside, darkness on the inside, but this is what's spinning this light. In other words, this donut that you're looking at is spinning around. This is the Ouroboros, or the dragon chasing its tail. That's because if you was looking at our world from the creator's view, you will see a light donut spinning. You will see a spinning donut of light. It'll be like a hula hoop. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is what's creating the shape of this light world is darkness. That's why when you look at Nut and Gale, you see that the darkness on the inside of her takes the shape of a mountain. That's consciousness. Consciousness has a shape, but it's surrounded by something that's shapeless. That's what we call in the Most High. It don't have a shape. Because it don't have a shape, we can have a shape. See what I'm saying? I'm trying to explain it in a simple way, but this picture show you how the darkness actually is shaping the light.
There's this book by David Icke called Tales from the Time Loop, and I think that he was intuitively grasping on what things are and just explaining it according to his own personal cosmology and how he sees things. And in Tales from the Time Loop, he says that we are essentially like infinite consciousness, and that what happened is when we decided to experience or something, what happens is a group diverged from this. He called it like a stream, like time is like a stream, diverges, and it goes into like a loop, like a whirlpool, and that would be us taking a more denser form and experiencing life. And then he says that what we're in right now is like the world, and he uses the word world, like being spun around, actually disconnects us from infinity. And that what keeps us here are the lower emotions that are based on on fear, on competition, on hate, violence, like basically that we're kept here by our own demons, and that until we can exercise these things and release the power that what he calls the reptilian consciousness has over us, we can't exit this whirlpool, this loop, and get back into infinity. And so in a way, it kind of is a way of explaining the spinning ball model, which cuts you off of infinite, possibly infinite land, and that you can't reconnect to infinity until you get past the deception at this level. Whoever it is keeping this place whirling, keeping it spinning, you got to stop the spin. And you don't stop the spin until you start perceiving for yourself and you engage in reality in a more cognitively harmonious way. In other words, not filtered through their priesthood, their computer models, their lies, their books, and their orthodoxies.
Exactly. I just think that, man, a lot of what they hiding from us is into areas of study that we don't really like to talk about, because we think it make us look dumb and stuff, like talking about this dark tower, or talking about sky falling, or Jack's beanstalk, the North Pole, and all of this stuff, that we talk about. Before this stuff became back popular, they already made it the thing to laugh at. So, it's to the point where they condition us even to be interested in. Oh, by the way, I found out too that they able to they got the technology now where you can edit your memories. If you want to remember something different, they got the technology to go back in your mind and edit your memories and shit. So,
like Eternal Sunshine. Yeah, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a Jim Carrey movie. And speaking of Jim Carrey, He's in a lot of movies that I've noticed have a very interesting subtext, very occultic. Like in The Truman Show, what causes him to awaken to the fact that he's in a big enclosed deception? It's the star, the dog star, Sirius, falls in front of him. So a satellite falls, a light from the stage. And he thinks it's a meteor because he hears it on the radio. But what you actually see on the sidewalk in front of him is a stage light, and it says, which is the dog star. So the dog star falling is what caused him to awaken to the big deception and realized that everybody around him was acting and lying to keep him from leaving. And what's interesting about that is tomorrow is Sirius rising. Tomorrow, the dog star rises above the sun, the heliacal rising of Sirius, and this represents like the beginning of the calendar year. In this particular calendar, where it's based on the rising of Sirius and its position relative to the sun. But it's interesting because that particular star figures so much in occult symbolism, in masonry, in the occult. The dog star, you always see it in these Masonic trestle boards, and it's like, what's the emphasis on this star? Like Order of the Eastern Star. And I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I just happen to notice that a lot of films involving Jim Carrey connect to the dog star and the number 23, which is for some reason with numerology, they somehow connect these things, which I don't even know all the meaning to it. It's in the movie called The Number 23.
The dog star, I'm gonna just tell you the big deception now. The dog star ain't got nothing to do with Sirius or nothing away. The dog star is Polaris. And the reason is links to the number 23 because it's 2 3s that make the conanga. It's called a double trident. Michael Jordan wore that number. Michael Jordan Yeah. See, I've been studying this stuff a while. The 2 3s is the double trident. If you look at Dogon Kananga, it's just the Earth compass. North, south, east, west with all of the ones in between. It's a 6-pointed star, but in 3D, it's a 10-pointed star. See, when you look at a double trident, I don't know if you can see my screen, but I got one on this Skyfall collage in the bottom left corner. That would be a conanga. That would be a conanga. It's like a compass, but it's a double trident because you got a trident at the top, a trident at the bottom, and then the earth plane horizon in the middle. Those 2 tridents represent the dome because dome to the ancestors was tri or 3. You know, a dome is a triangle or 3-pointed. You know, whether you make it a point at the top or a smooth dome, it's still 3 points. You know what I mean? So
like okay, what's your take on, like, why is it that all these priesthoods involve astrology? Like why would you have stellar light? Like, do you think that, like, as the sun and the moon have these different qualities, what is it about the stars and the wandering stars that were of particular interest to them? Like, is there something about, like, what is your take on what these luminaries actually are?
My thing on what they are luminescent light beings. I think they're the pure light of the Most High. This is how I look at it, right? The best way to do it is to pull up a brain real quick. Hold on. Brain.
Yeah. Okay, because like we were talking about earlier about John Dee, right? And he was an astrologer. And I was thinking, because one night I started, I watched the stars and the planets through binoculars most nights. And I got to thinking that you have these like pyramids where they align it with the stars. So the light of the star goes through the shaft into the queen's chamber or whatever. And I thought, isn't this the same thing as setting up a telescope so it concentrates the light from the star into the eye of the observer? And if that's the case, if they, like Dee and others, if these magicians who worked with astrology believe that they're communicating with stellar consciousness or something, then perhaps that's what they were doing.
But think about it. What is stellar consciousness? Because when they talk about stellar consciousness, think about, they made a movie called Interstellar where they start describing interstellar space. And when you start realizing where interstellar space is, I can point out to you where that is on the Hebrew cosmos right now, but they can't point out to you where interstellar space is on the heliocentric model. I mean, I'm just saying how the stuff you talking about, this stellar consciousness, and how looking through a telescope. Basically, check it out. You can look at the picture I'm showing you this way. We talk about the stars, right?
Right.
Everything is connected. So every living tree on the earth is eventually connected by a huge ass underground root system. This root system go beneath the oceans. I'm talking about every single tree on earth that's grown down deep enough will connect to a root system of trees that's been there from the beginning, if there was one. So think about what I'm telling you. When you look at the pictures in front of you of the brain cell and what they call in the universe, you looking at a root system that's made out of light. Whereas if you go to a jungle, each tree represents a new idea. And in your brain, when you have new ideas, what makes you wise is building highways to connect those new ideas. So when all of these lights go on in the mind of the Most High, these new ideas, what they connected by is the light rays of the next light by it. When you shine a light, it has rays coming from the source. And when that light rays touch another light rays that's shining from somewhere else, they create another light. When them two lights marry. And that right there is a whole nother world within itself. When two rays of light come together, they make another bright light. And all of these connections is being made. And the light rays are like the electrical cord, like we got telephone poles. Each pole can be looked at as a checkpoint. And this cord is ran to connect each one. Where the Most High don't have electricity cords running all, across the floor like I do in my garage. When we look up at the stars, we looking at checkpoints, we looking at specks of consciousness, and they all connected by the light of each other. That's the cords that's running across, So that we looking up at the brain of the Most High when we look up at the night sky. And all of the primordial ideas that the Most High had trickling all the way down here to earth where we at. So when we look up, we looking at the thoughts of the Most High that it had before those thoughts became more dense and dense to what we call the earth ground. So, the crazy thing about it is what I think stars are reference points for the elements. So when you think about what NASA teach you about the stars, they say, hey, one of those twinkling lights up there is a whole world full of arsenic gas. And they say, hey, that little yellow light that you see glowing over there, that's a world, that's a gold planet full of the gold. And they say, hey, this a diamond planet. They telling you all of them lights up there are different dump places of elements. Think about it. If the Most High was creating a heliocentric universe and it created all of these worlds and it's going by the same dumbed down construction that they go by, then you will have a bunch of waste left over and dump sites and chunks of gold and a big diamond planet over here and a big gas of arsenic over here left over. But that's not how the Most High did it. When we look up at those stars, we looking at how everything was simply thought into existence. When the Most High said, aha, there's something called oxygen that I want to create. The idea of oxygen existed as a star. Like how they show you in a cartoon, when a cartoon have an idea and a light go on above its head. When the Most High said, let there be oxygen, a star was created because that was an idea. Now that's the macrocosmic form of what oxygen is. So then the microcosmic form became the shit we breathing, because there's a micro or gaseous form and solid form to every idea and a liquid form. So oxygen is just as water too, H2O. But what I'm saying is the purest form of everything there is exists as a light seed planted in the darkness. And when you look up at the night sky, you looking at all the planted seeds of everything in this reality that's grown from the ground, planted in the soil. You see, it's sort of way, I can't put it in another way, but basically you're looking at one star may be what we calling hydrogen. One star may be what we calling, this. And when the Most High planted these spiritual seeds in the primordial sea of darkness. It's like you planting a seed in the dark ground, it manifests solidity. So everything on earth can be linked to the stars. This how we get astrology and shit like that. As above, so below. So I know that was kind of long winded and kind of all over the place,
No,
but
no,
I did the best I.
no. I like where you're going with that because we talk about things like this cognitive harmony. To me, is this idea that they have us in a state of cognitive dissonance if what we're perceiving is given a false interpretation. So they create a disconnect between our perception and what really is. And so what I'm interested in is what is it like to be in cognitive harmony? And to me, the first thing is you get rid of all the superstitions, delusions, and reality augmentations. So I would say, believers in any fundamentalist religion, whatever it happens to be, they are augmenting their beliefs. And I think that these augmentations are at the root of all the different problems we have between religions and faiths, where they're trying to assert their faith and nobody has any facts. It's all based on force, essentially. It's based on numbers, it's based on consensus. And to me, truth shouldn't take a back seat to consensus. Just because 97% of scientists say that the world's getting hotter doesn't mean that it is. And so we need to listen to the facts that don't fit the model. And like I'm seeing comments in the comment section, people have trouble with the idea of infinite plane society. And I think this is something worth addressing really quick, which is that's not an explanation or a model. All I'm saying with this is that we don't know and we need more investigation and evidence. And so until proven otherwise, I'm going to assume that the horizon is infinite. I'm not going to artificially.
Tell them again, my brother, why you go with the IPS and the infinite plane idea again.
Yeah, the infinite plane idea is simple. It's that for too long we have taken explanations from government appointed experts or religious authorities on what is. And we're not going to know what is until we've looked for ourselves, until we have some kind of investigation and exploration. And so even if you believe because of your own intuition, your own research, that we're in a domed system, that's fine. That's your belief. However, if you're trying to determine the truth, it is going to require some factual evidentiary basis for these beliefs. And that's going to have to come. And so I'm saying is that infinite plane society, the idea here is it's infinite until proven otherwise. I want to know what's there. And I'm not going to accept that somebody says there happens to be a barrier right there. If you accept the spinning ball model as handed to you, you can't go more than 12,500 miles before you're coming back to where you started. So they put a leash on you, on your imagination, under 13,000 miles. When, for all we know, if there is more land, it's less than 13,000 miles away. Like, they've leashed us to a very small, narrow paddock. And I think that if we prematurely accept a barrier, like, oh, well, there's an ice wall over there, because who said there's an ice wall? And I think if you just accept that there's an ice wall, and at the bottom of the ice wall or at the base of it is a dome, then you just accepted a new enclosure without testing it. And so, like, testing the globe, test all things. That's actually a biblical imperative from Thessalonians. Test all things. And we were supposed to test things. We're not supposed to accept things just on faith. We're supposed to have knowledge. And so I think what we need now is knowledge about what's out there. And the people who are leading with a total model already solved, they don't need to explore. If you accept Earth under a dome, accept the Pac-Man model, you don't need to go anywhere. If you accept any model as an authority, you're done. You're in a construct. I think the only real option for anybody who's pursuing truth ahead of consensus is exploration. And so, to me, like, look at there's a super chat here. Someone dropped a hashtag dome exit. I've been using that quite a bit because globe exit is easy. It's easy to break free of the state program religion, which is globe worship and heliocentrism and their whole timeline, their whole doomsday. That's easy. But dome exit means going beyond just recognizing that we were in a false paradigm and trying to figure out the barrier of where we were, and don't let them put a dome on it that constrains our movement. or conceals land, conceals truth. And
I totally agree with that. See, I think that was when Flat Earth first became popular. I didn't mean to cut you off, but when Flat Earth first became popular, that was a big war, like domers versus non-domers. You know what I mean?
yeah, it was kind of contentious because people who believe the dome think that this is a heresy. And what I'd like to say to them is like, if you really believe in it, then you shouldn't be mad if I want to go see for myself.
You right.
Unless you have something to hide.
And
Unless you
see,
have something to hide.
you sure enough right. But see, here go the thing where I say what pretty much in the whole war between domers and non-domers. I was the one that came along and said, hey, I'm both. I believe in the dome and an infinite plane. I believe that there are a bunch of dome within dome type ripple effect worlds on an infinite plane. So, like, if you could think of an infinite ocean and it's raining outside, and you will see like an infinite amount of ripples across this infinite ocean because the raindrops hitting the water creating ripples. I think that's what our world is made that way. But that's just my belief, and I got videos where I go into it. See, the thing about the dome is us discussing the nature of it. Like a lot of people talking like it's glass, it can be shattered. They far off the Richter scale with what the ancestors talked about this dome or this torus field. But I think that the dome is very interesting. Yeah, can you? The question is, should we go to the dome or not? But I think the first question should be, can you go to the dome or not? Because what is the dome? And what will we be going to? Now, we won't know until we do what? Physically go. But what if you never make it to a dome because it's so far off? A lot of folks make that argument. You never know till you go. Now, me personally, I think that where we're calling the dome at in relation to our 7 continents, I think that, to make it to the dome where you will actually be able to touch it probably would take some a long time. I think it's possible, but I think it'll be a big journey.
Thinking on it is that the real experiments that the powers that be fear aren't laser tests over lakes. Because you could do a 500-mile laser test and they're going to say gravity bent the light or something. I think the real experiments they don't want us to have are thought experiments, where we sit down and we say, well, what if it is flat, then what? Because once we go there, we start building an interest in ideas. And if somebody knows something, as in if these ideas get out there and somebody who's aware of something, like maybe they know that Antarctica's got more resources, or maybe it's not as cold as they say. Like, somebody knows something about land or about anomalies in the space program. Maybe there's a whistleblower waiting to come out, sitting on the ISS on the stage, resentful of the fact that they're participating in a big deception. Like, there are people out there who have the puzzle pieces we need to cause what I would say is a desire for a mass exploration. And so whistleblowers won't need, I think we don't need like 1 or 2 whistleblowers, like, oh, I know the moon landing. We need like 100 or 200 simultaneous whistleblowers in all areas so that they can't do damage control fast enough. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see somebody who worked on the set of Starman come out and say, yeah, Starman never went into space. It was all filmed in Elon Musk's garage, and he's a charlatan and a fraud. I'd like to have somebody say, yeah, there's no lunar rover, or there's no rover on Mars. All those pictures are coming from a studio that's out here in Greenland. Like, all we need are a few whistleblowers. I mean, that's how fragile it is right now. It's a house of cards. It's a house of cards, and it's just going to take a couple of inconvenient facts to come to the light. And that's why I think conversations like this are useful, especially when we go outside of the Tide Pod reality. We go outside of the parameters and we say, like, okay, well, what if there is? And so I like what you're saying here, your concept of what this place is. And yeah, there may not be a physical barrier, there may be one, but nobody should be threatened by us testing it. And I think that if you're going to tell me that it's a heresy to curve a flat earth into a ball, then how can you tell me it's not a heresy to curve a flat sky into a ball? or into a dome. Like, we're not in a position to be making these definitive statements about things. That's scientism and pseudoscience. Like, my answer is when somebody says, well, I know the sun is 93 million miles away, I say, well, actually, you believe it. You don't know it. And I don't know it either. Like, people are starting to know things they can't know all the time. And so I think it's going to take, you have to be kind of humble, I think, to be a true scientist, to recognize the boundaries of your own knowledge. Where's the edge between, or the edge separating what you know and what you think you know? And so to me, the search for the edge, which is what typifies flat Earth, isn't just about geographical boundaries. It's about all the enclosed systems in our mind that were put there by the people who wanted to keep us from figuring out the big picture.
Facts. And you know, and that's going even to what you were saying. Some things I can't know. And that's where we start saying, well, I believe. And it'll be good to transform those beliefs into knowing. But the only thing I'll say is this: when it comes to exploration, I don't think we need to go south in our explorations. If we're going to get funded by the people and we're going to be spending money to figure out this earth, the first journey we should take should be to the North Pole. We shouldn't go anywhere else but to where, because why? Well, that's where the compass is telling us to go. I want to go where the compasses say go. I want to see what's this dark tower. To me, that'll debunk the globe as well as so much more. It'll debunk, man, this dark tower, the Holy Grail, will actually be going to the Holy Grail. Think about that. Flat earthers taking a trip to the tree of life. I mean, that interests me more than any of them continents going south. The exploration, if you ask me, the first trip need to be to the North Pole, because that's where the compass is telling us to come past. And that'll tell us a lot, because if we get there and we see all these 4 continents, and you see pygmy people and giant people, and we got the camera on, and we saying, look, y'all, we in Shambhala right now. We on the first continent. We just landed in the land of the pygmies. Mercator was right. Mercator was right. They don't have this land on the maps. You know, that right there will be major. That will be major because, you know, you're going to this energy where the compasses say go. Now, that's one thing that works on my hand. I never been to the North Pole, but why people follow a lot of the teachings of not only myself and the ancients is because something pointing us there. That's some energy. That's something there that Earth built there to say, hey, when you, in your lifetime, come see this. You know how they try to tell us, look, man, you want to go to the Bahamas before you die. You want to go see the pyramids before you die. You want to go to Kukulkan in South America before you die. You got to go see the 7 wonders. No, all of the ancients talk about taking this trip to where they talking about Santa Claus at now today, fairy tale land. And I think that's where we need to go. I want to know if these 4 continents real, if we can film the river systems coming out like, hey, y'all, I'm at the first river and it's flowing outward just like the swastika show. You know, here's the other river. We'll hit every river. We'll do a circle around the Black Tower and film the whole shit and come back and say, look, y'all, you never saw this land before. Look, you see what I'm saying? So this will be deep.
Exactly. I think it's like that. I think seriously, one big anomaly exposed could just cause people to ask questions. And that's what we need. What we need is doubt. We don't need consensus. Like, I don't think it really is going to require millions of people figuring it out. Instead, it's going to require a few intrepid individuals to expose something that precipitates a climate to where it's safe for all the whistleblowers to put it all out there. Just leave it out there, open source, let everybody put the pieces together. And I almost think that it's inevitable because of technology, unless they have some way of, I don't know, some catastrophe or something short of that. What's going to, optics get better, drones get better, everything gets essentially more effective at gathering information, intelligence, we can sharing it. I mean, like I've been calling it the decentralized intelligence agency. That's us. We're going to figure this stuff out. And there's nothing their centralized intelligence agencies can do to stop it, because it's too late. Like, to me, it's like genie's out of the bottle. It's just a matter of, are we going to be then corralled by people who tell us there's nothing to see? Are we going to be corralled by a debate that leads nowhere? Or are we going to get behind those who are actually trying to make this thing happen in terms of like exploration? And I'm with you on the North Pole. I think it makes sense. I think both make sense, but for some reason, I think the North Pole is more intriguing to the most number of people. And if we want to build a mass movement, mass exodus, I think we need something that's going to draw a lot of attention to the idea that there's still more to find. There's still more out there. And so, like I said, there's exploringagain.com. They're going over both poles, and they have future plans for exploration. And that's their whole thing. Let's investigate and explore, and it may require that a lot of people take up an interest in this idea once we drop this assumption that we know all there is to know. You know, the scientists are so arrogant, they tell us they know what everything is to the edges of the universe. That's what they tell us. They tell us there's nothing else to see here, don't look behind the curtain. But I'm thinking, even Antarctica, we don't know anything about it. They say it's ice. We don't know anything about the North Pole beyond what they tell us. And I've run out of trust from these experts. I don't trust the news. I don't trust the academia. I don't trust the government, to be quite honest. I think it's all just too merged at this point. And so why would we trust the word of people who say there's nothing to see here? So,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, so again, you know, I know the idea of infinite plane might be offensive to some people who are really settled with their biblical flat earth thing. But what I would say is this: if there is some sort of exploration and they find a dome somewhere, and at the base of the dome, a whole bunch of, you know, spent rockets piled up or whatever, I'll be the first to admit it. And I'll change my title from Infinite Plane Society to Finite Domed Society. Like, I'll be the first one to admit I was wrong. But I think that what brought us here in the first place to this conversation was the desire to know more and to explore. It wasn't geography at first. We were exploring the parameters of the reality that was presented to us. We were asking questions. We went into conspiracy theory territory, but it was exploration that got us here. And we can't be satisfied that we have all the answers just because of, you know, flat earth, or this idea happens to like be all encompassing. I think that the exploration needs to continue. And their exploration goes into thought experiments. It goes into what you do with all of your broadcasts. But also, I think it means that there is a great interest being built up in the idea of seeing what's there. And a lot of us are very skeptical. So even this trip over the poles that's going to be made, it's over the poles 2018. Well, we're not under any sort of illusion that they're actually going to go over the earth in a big ball or anything like that. They have a prescribed route. And it's all we're doing here is showing you, look, this is what's said to be over the poles. This is what passes for it. We're just going to the edge, and we're getting closer and closer. So 2018, October 2018, we will be closer to an understanding than we were before, because we will have had a witness to a flight over both poles. And hopefully what that will do is gin up enough interest to help bring about an exploration further south or further north.
How do you do a flight over the South Pole?
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so it's called Over the Poles 2018. The guy from exploringagain.com is going. And they're going.
And shout out to him too. He's supporting the show out there. Appreciate the donation, guys. I'm gonna read these super chats in a second.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what they're going to do is they're going to take him somewhere they say is the South Pole. You know. So then that's the whole. You're going to convince that you went over a ball, but we're just going to have somebody firsthand experience what the deceivers will tell us constitutes a flight over the poles. Because it's absolutely not.
That is. I see. I'm tripping. Yeah, because you will have to go on a globe. You should be able to locate this area called the South Pole. So when you guys get there, I doubt if it's that's gonna be deep, especially the North Pole overhead flight. Shout out to man exploring again. Let me read these super chats because I really appreciate y'all supporting the show. People been showing both of us love. Shout out to Shield Scanner. Go find the others. Miguel Mojica. Exploring again. Been supporting the show. And again, they're the ones actually doing the trip. So big shout out to them, man. I can't wait to see that footage. That's going to be major. Real talk. That's real major. Let me give a shout out to Just Be Real. X Mine on a Millie. And Be Strong. Appreciate all of y'all, man. I'm gonna read some of these from exploring.com. Said love, bro Sanchez and IPS. Thanks for shouting out the Exploring Again community. Dome equal controlled opposition. I agree. Even though I agree that there is a dome, I don't see the dome as any kind of barrier or nothing that, because I do teach that we're on an infinite plane. But I think the domes is, can be penetrated. I think that we can access lands beyond the what we're calling the southern ice ring, and I think that the dome ain't nothing physical or some kind of barrier. But that's another discussion, I guess, we can have in the future, the nature of the dome, and talk about really why Christians want the dome, why they push the dome so much, because that links into Yahweh's terrarium. But the thing about Yahweh's terrarium, Yahweh just one God across an infinite plane of terrariums. If you ask me. And I think that like the Christians want it to be some kind of end or barrier, because where that barrier begin, because where they saying the barrier of the earth ends is where the preaching and teaching and belief systems of their gods began. So without that barrier, there's no space for their God. But when you say earth is an infinite plane, then you show the infinitude of the creator through its creation. Because if the creator is infinite, then the creation would be infinite. But a Christian person or any kind of religious person would need a boundary there so they God can have somewhere to rule surrounding the entire creation. You have Jesus or Allah, Buddha. But when you go back to what I'm saying is that all of these images of the creators are illusions. When you go outside every day and see the sun and moon and the beautiful creation, you're looking at the image of the creator. And if the creator is infinite, then the creation is infinite. That's why I go with the infinite plane idea.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of imposing a limit. So to me, it's infinite possibilities, infinite until proven otherwise. Is vested interest in proving any particular model, just like I don't have a vested interest in proving any particular religion. And so I want to keep an open mind. And so to me, the discussion isn't really about round or flat so much as it's about open or enclosed, meaning, open mind or enclosed mind. An enclosed mind is a mind that has all the answers. They got it from the right book. Oh, I read Dianetics, I know everything, I'm done. Or I read this holy book, I know everything. And so I like the idea of, maintaining the open, rational skepticism of a scientist when it comes to perception. Like, we have to be realizing that memory, can be wrong. We can be wrong. Calculations are wrong, and everything has to be falsifiable. One of the criticisms I have of the mainstream media these days is how they report on something and nobody can challenge it. They report news so fast, it's just assumed to be true. And so you have like a school shooting going on, and the president tweets, "My condolences." And it's like, well, hey, we don't even know if that wasn't just an active shooter drill presented as real. So I think we live in a very reality impaired society. So I don't feel bad, or I don't feel guilty or ashamed about talking about subjects or topics that they think are laughable, because I think their reality is not laughable, but it's actually quite sad if you think about how much of their perceptions have been hijacked, and they're in a simulated reality. If you believe in some of this earlier today, let's say that out of your reality, in the time that you've been like paying attention, let's just say the news, in the last 20 or 30 years, you've seen 1,000 news events that were like considered major world events. Out of these events, let's say half of them were psychological operations, and another quarter of them were just complete propaganda that never happened. And then you take these, but you include them in your worldview. Well, then the world you live in is slightly divorced from reality. The world that you live in is actually something of a simulation. So I'm at my grandparents' house and they're watching CNN, and Jim Acosta says, since Sandy Hook, there have been 1,500 mass shootings and 7,000 victims. And my grandparents are like, you know what? I didn't even say it, but I'm just thinking, I know for a fact that those statistics are based on lies and distortions and propaganda. And so as a result of this lie, my relatives live in a world where a bunch of kids are getting murdered in schools. And it's like, that's not the reality. And so these media pundits have a very dark vision, dark reality. They're doomsayers. And I think one of the problems that we're facing is that most people in the country don't know that the media, not just bias, fake news is actually complete fabricated news. I don't think people are aware of just how deep the propaganda goes, how it's actually legal, for that matter. So anyway, I'm glad that you don't kowtow to public pressure. Like I said at the beginning, when I first started my channel a little over a year ago, I was getting a lot of flack from Bible boofers who were really just obsessed with criticizing me for questioning their paradigm. And I'm like, we got to keep an open mind. And so you were one of the channels that came down, and you said, just keep speaking your mind. And so, that's where we've been at. We've always been talking about things outside of, because, we value ideas. No reason to shut people up because you don't agree. And so anyway, I want to, thank you for having me on here, of course. And we have to do this again.
We most definitely do. And you welcome anytime, man. I want to give another shout out to you in exploring again for this exploration. I'm pretty sure you probably gonna get the naysayers and haters, but to me, I think this is dope, man. I talk about the North Pole all the time. I'm excited. I can't wait to see when we get that footage and you fly over it and they say, hey, this is what we see. I can't wait to see, exactly what that's going to be. And then another thing that was put in the chat by Exploring Again made me think about something in the Bible. It say, be fruitful, multiply, and spread across the face of the earth. That couldn't be possible on a globe. That commandment that the God of the Bible gave, I'm not a Christian, but I'm telling you, whoever wrote that scripture knew they was on a flat earth, because the face of the earth would be simply like you looking at the face of a mirror or the face of a river seeing your reflection. It will be a distorted reflection on a ball. When it say be fruitful, multiply, and spread across the face of the earth, the Most High was actually dividing itself up into what we call humans. When they said we made in the image of God, we made in the imagination of God. Everything is a thought. So the face of the earth is just this infinite canvas, because the Most High is an artist. And unlike painters in your world, the Most High's canvas is infinite. And it's painting an infinite creation. Ain't no edges to this canvas. And the word canvas can be translated to even relate to the earth. But I ain't gonna even do that right now. But it's so much deep stuff, man. I like to go into it. The infinite plane concept is definitely something you said that's deep. Until you can prove there's an edge, it's infinite. Because one thing we don't have to prove is that if there is a creator, which we know it got to be because there's a damn creation outside, we know that that creator has to be infinite, or it got to be this. If something created time, it must be timeless. So what I'm saying, yeah, that creator would have to be infinite. You know what I'm saying? So if the creator is infinite, I'm gonna keep repeating myself like a tape recorder. The creation is infinite, and that's my argument. Since we can't prove the infinitude, you'll never be able to prove infinity. Because if we live on an infinite plane, you'll never reach an edge. So you'll never, be able to prove that. It's kind of like
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things. It's like, it's not a model, it's just a trajectory, it's an approach. And it's like truth itself. Like I look at trutherism, truthers, it's become something of a religion where if you accept certain beliefs, like banks are evil, chemtrails are killing us, and the Illuminati are going to create a one world order through environmentalism and take over whatever. Like these are all these conspiracies that we have, whatever. Like, one second here, I'm looking at some comments. Sorry, I got sidetracked by the chat room. I haven't looked into it yet.
Let me just make one little note too. Exploring again, I made you a moderator so you can put your links or whatever you got to put.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. Speaking about links, I don't have a YouTube channel I'm using right now. I got kicked off. I've been having a lot of trouble keeping a channel up because I talk about these psyops and stuff, and they just kill your channels. So what I have been doing is using an email list. So infiniteplainsociety.com. It's just an email list, and so I email people whenever I do a new like this. I'll just send a link. Hey, I was on Bro Sanchez today. That's how I've been keeping in touch with people instead of a YouTube channel for the time being until I can figure out how to not get myself kicked off of YouTube.
Oh man, they keep you had to make another channel now? Cause I got a new link to the Infinite Plains Society channel. That's because you don't have the other ones?
Yeah, exactly. I've been, yeah, it's one of
Alright.
those things with YouTube, and it's just because I got tired of all the strikes for this or that. I think the last time I really had a good channel going, it was taken down because I talked about the shooting in Vegas. And this is one more area. It's like even talking about the Vegas thing would get you shut down. So they don't even want to hear voices from people that they haven't like pre-approved and sanitized. You know, they're trying to control every story, every single narrative out there. And here we are wrecking it just by asking questions.
Yep. They sure ain't playing any kind of videos with. Look, I used to do so many hoax videos and crisis actors videos, and my channel was one strike away from being terminated. And I said, you know what? I ain't even fucking with these hoax stories no more. That's the game right there. Cause if you in this community right now and you don't know that these stories are a hoax by now, I ain't finna be risking my channel to teach kindergarten to these folks that should be past the hoax and the crisis actor shit now. I think what
Yeah,
you see what
yeah.
I'm saying? Because I peeped the game. All of the shit that was shutting me down. Virginia shooting is false. This is false. That's false. Strike terminated, bullying, some shit inappropriate, and oh man, and they got strict ass punishment. It don't be no little smack on the wrist. You know, they ain't playing about them news stories, and you right.
Yeah,
I don't know why they going so hard on news stories when people finding out that the news full of shit.
no, I'm with you on this now. See, I used to say, I found it troubling that to preserve our channels, we have to compromise. We have to make these things, but I'm with you now. Like after the Parkville shooting and Starman, I set up a new litmus test. I said, if you can't denounce that Starman Tesla in space is fake in the same breath that you say that Parkland was fake, well, then you're on the other side of the green screened reality. You're on the other side of the fence. And it's like, it's not, there's no point. Like, I'm not going to bother even debating the globe with somebody if they accept everything told to them by the mainstream media news. It's like, no, it's just too big. They're too lost at this point. And I want to concentrate on people who see past the green screen and past all the CGI fakery, past the lies and the deception. And I'm finding there's actually a lot of us. It's not like we have to open up the tent to ignorant people or people who will not see, because there's nobody as ignorant as somebody who won't see what's right in front of their face. So we just exclude those people until they can mature and see for themselves. And I'm finding that I'm constantly inundated with emails, and I'm getting a lot of correspondences with people who know how fake the media is. They know its role. They know how fake the space program is, and they're all equally interested as I am in finding out what is. And we're all happily admitting whenever we're wrong. I mean, I say, prove me wrong on anything, please. Show me that the space program isn't a mask for the mystery Babylon religion of, phallic worship. Please show me the counterfactual information so I can move on with my day. But it hasn't happened yet. In fact, anybody interested in that topic, I have a book on Amazon. The audiobook just came out. It's called Secret Religion of the Elite. And in that book, I break down how they took the mystery Babylon and dressed it up with science fiction. Like one more example, satellites. The idea of satellites, you always see them, they have like the main piece and then like two wings. They look kind of like angels. And I've been saying is that in the old system, they needed a spy. They had this like myth of spies. Like everywhere you go, angels are watching, and they're recording your bad deeds, and they're reporting to the church, or they're reporting to God. And so when you go to church, you may as well confess, because they already know what you did. The angels are watching, and they report to central authority. And so what they've done is they've, from the New World Order religion for atheists, they replaced these ubiquitous spies with satellites. So wherever you go, satellites are watching. You can't see them, but they can see you, and they can report on you to who? Central authority, God, or government in this case. So, rockets, obelisks, angels, satellites, original sin, carbon footprint, sin, pollution. These are all various ways. And then, of course, eschatology. You got wrath of God became wrath of globe. Every element of their old control system, every piece of this template has been given new life with science fiction and pseudoscience presented to us, so that people wouldn't even know that, hey, look, if you're a heliocentrist, I'm sorry, but you're a sun worshiper.
It's just deep that you say how they turned the new angels into satellites. Even the ISS, one of their most esteemed satellites, can be translated to ISIS, which was it's deep because it's like back in the ancient day, they had all of these personifications of deities that personified cosmological concepts. Isis was one. They had other deities, and all of these were ideas that were surrounding the minds of the ancestors. And if you could think of all of these deities like a halo spinning around their head, it's deep because this is what governed, this was their idea of the cosmos they had in their symbols. NASA took the same symbols, and instead of got us looking up at the stars, we looking up at a symbol like the ISS. When you get into sacred geometry, you realize that it's called the Isis, and it's shaped just like the goddess named Isis with the wings. And this is deep because what Isis would have done to the ancients back in the day, what it would have taught them about the stars, that's what they telling you the ISS doing for you today, and it's shaped like her.
Yeah, definitely. The ISS connection is definitely there. And I've been looking at that one because to me it seems like you have, right, and then it merges with the goddess when it launches. When it penetrates the dome of the sky, it's going into the womb. And this is where you have like the lunar landing was actually the great rite of Wicca, the great rite of all the occult religions, where it's basically a drama. They're dramatizing the sex act, the conception. And so the rocket representing the sun god, usually named after one, and then it goes to the ISS, to Isis. And so when I'm looking at the astronauts and their spacewalks, you know what they look like to me, given that the night sky space would then be the womb of Isis, of the goddess. When you see the astronaut on a spacewalk with his tether, it looks like almost like a fetus, like larval, no face, big old giant head, and it's got the tube connecting into the ship, to the mothership. So they're giving you the womb of Isis in their rituals. You got the god, the obelisk, the phallic god of the earth merging with the goddess. The astronauts in the capsule represent the seed. The top of the obelisk, the golden tip of the obelisk, is the royal blood or the seed. And like, look at Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos' rockets from Amazon. His rocket has the top, it's Blue Origin, blue blood, the capsule representing the tip of the pyramid. And that's the part that drops its payload, is what they call it. SpaceX calls it a payload. They drop it into orbit. That's them inseminating the mother goddess, the night sky. It's Mystery Babylon. SpaceX, not a coincidence that Elon Musk's Mars project and Falcon 9 uses the Falcon. The Falcon is Horus, the god of Mars. And in the new age, we're entering the age of Horus, the age of Mars. So their ritual pageantry is right there in the open if you have the initiated interpretation of it, which we figured it out through intuition or through our own research and comparative mythology, religious syncretism. That's all we're looking at, syncretism.
Oh man, this what you said about the tethered astronaut and the baby and the fetus, how they giving us the sex magic on micro and macro. Oh, it's just deep stuff. If you look at my screen now, I got a picture of the baby tethered with the umbilical cord, and I'm switching back and forth to the astronaut. And buddy, you spot on with it. It's just it's sex magic. Like you said, the rockets are named after the phallus gods, the sun gods, because it got the fire blasting off. You know, that's the sperm going to penetrate this darkness of space. When it get there, you know, like you said, an astronaut is tethered. It's a whole sex and birth process before our eyes. Then what happened? They come back to Earth. This is reincarnation in life and death. And like I said, the reason they can only re-give us this for this modern day deception is because this the code of the cosmos. This is your 0 and your 1, your binary code. It's that the rope and the egg that's protecting you. Something feeds you and something. See what this show you is the rope is feeding the baby, and the fetus sac is protecting it. So being fed and being protected is something called nurture. And the word nurture is the word nature, because nature feeds us all and protects us all. And that's all nurturing or nature it is. This is the cycle of life, the 0 and the 1. You know, the sperm and the egg, the umbilical cord, the fetal sac. This is the sacred geometry, and that's all they can give us is this. That's the string theory, you know, the needle and the thread. So it's deep how this is one code is on so many levels. And even today when they deceive us, they have to give us this same thing in a different way. And I think it's real deep.
Yeah, you read my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, you read my mind with the zeros and ones, because I was thinking about this this basic astrotheological ritual of the daily death and resurrection of the sun god with the symbol of the obelisk and then the night sky. That's the night sky, that dome, that's the 0. The obelisk is the 1, and creation is the product, or incarnation is the product of the constant union of these opposites. So yeah, they are ritually reenacting this very basic process. And so I've been looking at these astrotheological religions and how they like reinterpret these things. And I caught this the other day. I was looking at Frankenstein and the story of Frankenstein, the Frankenstein's monster, and it seems like a retelling of the myth of Osiris. So Osiris, you know, god of the green man, vegetation god, he's the sun god. He's dismembered, and you know, every day he's dismembered, and then he's reassembled at night by the night sky goddess, who then completes him by putting an obelisk on the grave because he had been castrated and he had his thing severed. So then she brings him back to life the next day. And I thought, well, isn't that the story of Frankenstein's monster, who's this corpse in many different parts? They put him together, and they use a lightning rod, which brings the energies from the night sky down into him and then bring him to life. And it seems like it's this story of life is inherent in the earth, in the soil, in the ground, this vegetation god, and that it's a process of this constant dynamic relationship between what's above and what's below, between the god and the goddess, the polarities. And so I look at the ones and the zeros like on the matrix, and the color green even is like the green man. Is what they call this
You're right. Green is the color for Earth. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what color is Frankenstein's monster? You know, whenever you see his image.
Yep.
They always show him, you see what I mean? And so I've been looking into modern retellings of these ancient myths, and I'm finding them everywhere. You know, Darth Vader is Osiris. Darth Vader is or Saturn. He's the Saturnian aspect of the sun god. Luke Skywalker.
So right. Darth Vader is the god Saturn. He's the Reaper. Saturn is all of that, represent that dark tower. You so right, because look, he gave birth to the light, which was Luke. You know.
Yep, exactly. And you know, Luke, I am your father, and of course, at that scene, if you remember in that scene, he severs Luke's hand. Well, severing his sword hand is the same as cutting off his member, which is what happens to the sun god, and then he gets remembered, he gets reattached. So Luke then falls down the hole, and he hangs in Cloud City, another crucified sun god, just like Osiris. So he replays that myth before he has his sword hand restored, before he's remembered. So they play out these ancient myths in front of us. So we all have them in our psyche. You know, I don't know if they're drawing from the Akashic records or what, but they're tapping into something, and there's a reason why the biggest, most popular movies embody these very big archetypes, that if you know the interpretation, you can see what they're actually telling the masses. You know, there's an esoteric side to Hollywood.
Oh man, it's so deep. And you know, I think that's when you really start becoming enlightened. Just like, you know, you got your first 3 degrees of masonry where you really just don't know shit. You think you initiated. Then you get to the fourth degree, they be like, okay, now you're a real Mason. You like, what the fuck, all of that time? Yeah, it was. You see what I'm saying? Like, I think the same initiations we go through in these quote unquote conscious communities, because it's so many levels of awakening, man. It's so many layers and layers of deception that is just, it can actually, I see now when you was talking about lunatic, studying the moon will make your ass crazy. But crazy in a way where you really the wise man today, but that wise man is the lunatic today. That you hear that fool talking about how, you know, some Rahu and Ketu cause moon phases and the celestial, you know, all of this talk that we talking, real talk, a normal, smart citizen would call this, we're fucking lunatics, y'all. I'm serious. Like, hey, some of my uncles who, you know, into like law and shit and don't really look at flat earth and what we call conspiracies and shit. But just some of your folks, you know, if they listen in on some of this conversation, they'll be like, these are some damn lunatics. When you really look at it, that's exactly what we are. Like, a lot of what we talking about would have been revealed through the study in the moon phases and the mysteries of the moon. So your first calendars were lunar calendars. You know, the darkness got a connection with the moon more than the sun. Now, a lot of people looking at that yin yang symbol on my screen, I was pulling that up there just to get flat earthers to look at that. Maybe that's how the sun and moon go. Another way we can say how the sun and moon behave on a dome. Maybe the what I was saying, IPS, because I'm all over the place right now. I'm just skipping around right now. But anyway, what I was saying was longitude and latitude can really be the movements of the sun and moon if you look at this yin yang little model. I can be wrong, but I'm just throwing it out there. Like, maybe our sun make a horizontal circuit around the Taurus field, and our moon makes a vertical circuit around the Taurus field. And when eclipses happen, that's when the crossroads meet. So it's like a circle that's laid flat and a circle standing up, creating a sphere or the construct of this cosmic egg, so to speak. Is hard to explain.
No, that's interesting because, you know, we get these people who say, well, the flat Earth map has no predictive capabilities. And it's like, well, hey, look, the very first total solar eclipse was predicted by Thales of Miletus, and he did it 585 BC. And that guy was a flat earther. Like, in the sense that he didn't assume that we were on a spinning ball when he predicted the eclipse. He just presumed that we were on a flat plane and that the lights moved above us in a very predictable way. He didn't infer from that a ball. And yet, the very first prediction of a solar eclipse was by this individual. You know, I'm tired of that argument from ancient Greeks, like, oh, all the ancient Greeks knew this, therefore it's true. It's like, it's a bad argument. And two, if the ancient Greeks started their arguments on the basis that the world is a ball because they saw boats going over the horizon, well, then they were wrong, because boats don't go over the horizon. They disappear from our view, they converge to the horizon, but we know now that they don't. And so you have to throw all that out. All these arguments from authority. You know, I'd like to see somebody go do the experiment of Eratosthenes, go put some sticks in the ground. In fact, some doctor, I think in Canada, did it recently on a bike, and he measured the sun's shadows in two different places a few hundred miles apart. And, you know, his results, you know, gave him the circumference of the Earth. But of course, he started off with the assumption he was on a ball. You just take the raw data, it tells you one of two things. You're either on a ball with a very, very distant sun, or you're on a flat plane with a localized light source. But why would you infer a ball if you can't see a curve? And I have the same problem with the dome. You know, I don't have a problem with the idea. I know that there's barriers. I know there are limits. But you can't tell me the sky curves until you've told me what the formula is and how you measured it. I haven't seen any sky curves, so to me, the sky is flat.
You know what?
There's no reason to infer.
I'm sorry to cut in, but I think the dome concept is the fact that a lot of the domers now, they're actually tweaking their theology over time. I was one of them. I actually saw the dome as some solid at first when I first came in Flat Earth, and I started studying more. I'm like, wait, so many agendas, you just got to do your own research. But you spot on. I believe that the sky is a infinite plane like the earth, and the dome concept of it is that our eyeballs are a dome, so everything kind of curves or converges in the distance. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's and it's perfectly reasonable anyway, for people to want an explanation. So I get it. But one of the things I think that has kept us blind for this long time is that we have become accustomed to having all the answers and not being able to deal with uncertainty, or not having answers, or being able to admit that we're ignorant. And so it always bothers me when I have scientists, who are just like willing to make these bold claims as though they have the authority to say it, and they don't really give you any indication that they're just totally fabricating. So, like, for example, earlier we were talking about the TRAPPIST star system, trillions of light years away, and Neil deGrasse Tyson's like, well, yeah, they're very far away, but they're in a Goldilocks zone. If we can get up there, it'd be paradise, and maybe we'll find a wormhole that'll take us there. And I'm hearing this guy, and it's like, do people realize that that is not science? That he's selling us on a fantasy? And people listen to him, but because he's on TV, he has some kind of authority. And then people like you or I, who are just asking questions about what's at our North Pole, we sound crazy by comparison. But no, I really don't think so. In fact, I think the only people who can claim to be not using pseudoscience whenever they're trying to interpret reality are people who aren't assuming that the world is spinning. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but like, if you're not judging things from a flat stationary perspective and analyzing outward, you're augmenting your reality. So we're not reality deniers, nor are spinning ball earthers reality deniers. The difference is we're just perceiving and they're augmenting. And we're just like declining their augmentation. Just like global warming. I think many of the arguments you make against believing in global warming, you could make against believing in a spinning ball Earth. So that's another one too. I think people who can see through, because you're talking about normies, like you want to have a conversation with people who've never even approached the edge, ask them about global warming. If somebody understands that global warming is a hoax, to other areas, but they have to at first lose that naivety about you can trust the news, you can trust the scientists, you can trust the government. Blind faith and trust is what got us into this mess. And so I think we need to get rid of blind faith and trust and replace it with knowledge, with investigation and exploration.
Exactly, brother. I'm definitely with that because what the whole social aspect of the movement is supposed to do is stimulate the physical aspect, which is when you go on somewhere, you don't just start walking. Discuss where you're going, then you start walking. So after we discuss where we're going and we've talked enough about the layout of the earth and the flat plane and the North Pole is the secret place. Hey, we told millions of people there's lands around this pole. We're past the talking part. Now we got to start moving to the place that we talked about so we can, that's one thing about news reporting. It's a reason they do what they do. A news reporter report you a fucking a nasty storm while they standing right in it. You like, damn, why he didn't go somewhere dry to report the story? Because it just has a better impact on you to act when you see it visually. So we talked about these places, got pretty pictures of them, but to actually go and be reporting from there is a whole different ball game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I call this thing the mediated reality. Most people are in a mediated reality. So I look at like the media itself, I call it a game: government, academia, media, entertainment. All these institutions that form our reality for us, specifically news media, what they're doing every day is just reinforcing a bunch of explanations so that you don't have to ask for answers or look for them. And George Orwell in 1984 wrote about this. He said orthodoxy is unconsciousness. So orthodoxy is just whatever everyone already believes. And so if everything you do is completely orthodox and something that was handed down by habit and tradition or whatever, you're asleep. You're unconscious. And you don't have any need to think because you have all the answers. And that's my problem with religions. Religion sells you on all the answer. Oh, just trust our experts. We'll give you all the answers. And I don't think any religion can actually claim the authority to have every answer. I think it's a pretty arrogant assertion, and it's very divisive. And the people who claim that the Bible is the inerrant word of God are some of the most divisive people out there, very judgy. They can't wait to see God rain down the outpouring of his wrath upon their enemies because they got the ticket to heaven. It's pretty messed up.
You're so enough right. And man, it's so deep that I've heard people say, I can't wait till the Most High kill you motherfuckers. I just can't wait to God. Look, I be looking at these channels, and these are conscious people. They talk like that. God gonna come back and fuck y'all up, and I can't wait to. And it's like, if God don't return, but if some bad happened to these people, if the government poison them or kill them, hey, fuck it, God did it, because I don't like them. So you can justify murder, because, it's so deep. It's just so deep how. And I know you got to get out of here too. We reaching the 3 hour mark.
But no, you just hit on a really solid point though with this last one. The Westboro Baptist Church would go out and demonstrate in favor of natural disasters. God sent the shooter. Thank God for 9/11. Thank God for Katrina. Because they saw it as evidence that God was going to come elevate them, rapture them, give them immortal spirit bodies or whatever, and let them come down and punish people. No, I mean, I'm serious. These religions are wicked.
That's dangerous thought, because with that we consent to our own attack. Like I said, when these motherfuckers, they got aircrafts that they've been hiding, Tim. And I'm in the Air Force, man. When I was in the Air Force, you walk around base, you will see little brochures and shit, like when you waiting in the barber shop or waiting somewhere on base or something. They had our own little Air Force brochures. And in these brochures, it'll show you the future technology that they got coming for the troops and shit. But they was showing us the new smart uniforms that they wearing now. I saw them shits when I was in. We still had the regular camos. But what they wearing now, I saw it in the brochure before it came out. I remember looking in that book and seeing the new uniforms that they got on now. I remember them showing these guns that they like robots. It's like some Terminator type shit. They got some shit out there that's scary. I'm making future videos on I'm gonna name them future weapons and shit, because it's a lot of shit they ain't showing us. They got some scary shit out there. But I'm saying that to say they also had different things in those brochures, and I done lost my train of thought, getting all over the place, and my ass is just tripping. Maybe that's my cue to go. But I'm gonna say this and end it on this, man. They definitely doing a number on us, man. I lost my train of thought. Maybe one of y'all will throw me the bone in the chat. But I have the most brain farts than anybody, don't it?
No. We were going into technologies, things that you saw back then that we're seeing now that were just like long ago already in the works. And yeah, that's something too. I don't presume that all of the technology that we have is the result of like the marketplace, like the iPhone 7. These things, they're all iterative technologies, market driven. But I don't think that it's pure just market driven technologies. I think that there's hidden stuff that's being introduced, trickled out, and I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to know that we're 200 years behind or something. I mean, that sounds bad because then we're pretty much screwed. But it wouldn't shock me. You've seen the movie The Village, where these kids are in a commune and they don't even know it. They think the year is like 1850, but it's the 20th century, 21st century. Their parents just had them born in a commune and didn't bother to tell them that they're out in the middle of a wilderness, a habitat, a refuge. And so they were kept 200 years behind. And the reason they didn't leave is they were told, hey, if you go into the woods outside the village, the monsters will get you. Well, it turns out that the priesthood, the elders, dressed up as monsters at night and wandered around in the woods. And that's exactly like our media, our government, staging events to corral us and to keep us from going outside of their parameters. Like, we are in a village in that very real sense. And we've been betrayed by the people who built it because they are wearing two masks. On the one hand, they're leaders. On the other, I mean, they play both sides.
Yeah, they definitely do. And you know, and
Well, yeah,
that.
we were.
Mhm.
Well, we were talking about the judgment though, like the judgment day, and how these people get off on watching their enemies get punished. And I'm
Yeah,
saying
man.
that.
That's exactly. Now you just threw me the bone. Go ahead. I remember now. Go ahead. You got it.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's where we're going with this. I was just remembering the same thing. We were talking about that, the
Yeah,
wishing of the wrath of God on the others.
a lot of the technology that I noticed that they shooting toward is like technology that's aimed toward more so riot control type shit. It ain't nothing that if you was in the military, you would look for us to be making for to go at an enemy because a lot of that shit, a lot of the technology we use to fight so-called enemies is made for me to be at a distance from that enemy. Meaning, I ain't up on my enemy. I'm shooting at him from a distance, and my technology is me being miles away from my energy, and we exchanging fire that way. That's really basic military technology. But a lot of technology I'm noticing that they coming out with now is like short range, hit a large motherfucker amount of people in a short, close proximity. And it's like, hell, who we fighting now? I study weapons, so I know the shit they creating ain't for the normal warfare. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. And I think a lot of the shit, the weapon, when I look at it and put it all together, these future machines ain't gonna be humans. How we be saying, hey man, ain't nothing gonna happen because our sons and daughters ain't gonna turn on us for the government. You know, the military have to come to your house. They'll say, you know, our sons and daughters ain't gonna turn on us. It ain't gonna be our sons and daughters. I think these folks got armies of drones and robots. Man, they even got dolphins swimming in the ocean. These ain't real animals. They already planted cameras and robots in the ecosystems, animals and insects flying around neighborhoods for years, and it's drones and shit like that that they've been doing. So we got to really see how deep this shit is. Like right now in my garage, it's a fly flying around. Who's to say that ain't a motherfucking drone? I'm telling you, they got microscopic insects and shit and all of that. And I think we forget about like a lot of the weapon they creating for the future to attack us is gonna be designed by your own consent. So you know,
And they send out stuff that looks like, this is what I'm thinking too. Let's say they did send out weapons that resemble things that are described in the book of Revelations. How easy would it be to hype up that psyop? You'd be able to like create things that look like things, insects, little flying scorpion things, stinging people or whatever,
yeah.
for maximum effect. Like, yeah, I think you're right about that.
Cause look, Blue Beam is real, and I think that the reason it ain't came about yet, cause they wanted to die down like everything else. And guess what? When ain't nobody else talking about Blue Beam, the sky gonna light up on our ass. Because in China,
Ooh,
yes, yes, buddy. That's what I think. Blue Beam
That's
gonna be them attacking us. Talk to them. I bet.
no, you're good. You're good. You hit this thing. I was talking about Bluebeam earlier. I was like, wait, nobody's been talking about Bluebeam for a while. And it's not like that technology went away. So I think you're onto something with that. And it actually occurred to me when I was reading about this Sky Dome thing, or Skyfall, the Skyfall 2018, where you have this segment of people saying the dome is going to crack and large chunks of glass are going to fall on the non-believers. So they're saying the dome's going to crack. Well, I got to thinking maybe they could use Project Bluebeam to make it appear as though the sky is cracked, and they could drop some bombs and say it was parts of the dome, and project the crater on the sky, and really incite a war between the believers and the non-believers. Like, it would be very divisive to have something like that, where you have a lot of people who are predisposed to be superstitious and to just fall for it. People who used to believe in miracles all the time. The churches have always had miracles. They've had saints that wouldn't corrupt, that their bodies wouldn't rot. They've had healings, healing of the blind, faith healers. They've always been able to prey upon the gullibility of people to believe things. And Project Bluebeam, to me, if they can convince 90% of the population of something crazy, the 10% of us who can see through it won't matter.
And
So I'm
that's
glad you brought up. Glad you brought it up. I haven't heard that in a while.
it's something that's always in the back of my mind because what I found out is they've had blue beam technology so long, and it's certain conditions though, like when the sky got a lot of moisture in it, and when it's a lot of water molecules or vapors in the sky, then you'll see them bring experimenting with a lot of the blue beam technology. If you think about that meteorite that was over Russia, if I'm playing the video right now, I don't know if you're looking at YouTube, but you're an analyst just like me. So if you watch this video, you'll know damn well they want us to think this is a gray rock, y'all. Guess what? That's some kind of military airplane with a tail on it. That's some kind of controlled explosion, a big ass skyrocket. And guess what? I think that the flare from it would be the same flare. Think about this. If I stand up in a room and light a flare up, even though my light's on in the room, you'll see the reflection of that flare vibrating, say bright as fuck on all the walls in this garage, and it'll be actually a brighter light within a lesser light, so to speak. I know I'm explaining it horrible, but if you look at this some type of high-tech fireworks that they got, and it's clear nothing hit the ground. All it did was create some sort of a flare, and you can tell that the flare by the atmospheric conditions reflected this shit across a vast radius. But you never heard a collision. It was silent. The people just saw a flash, but they didn't hear boom. You didn't feel no ground shaking. And all of a sudden they pick up this big old rock off the ground and say, hey, hit this, here go the rock from the meteor. And the rock looked just like some regular old bullshit. Ain't no smoke on it. Ain't no signs of, man, I'm telling you, they've been, and right now what they doing, right, Tim, to make the ISS real, they throwing gas canisters in people's cities. And people like, what's these black balls dropping out the sky? And NASA coming out, well, these are the gas canisters for the ISS, and the shit look like a goddamn, oh man, it's so laughable. Dude, it's so much
that's
damage.
lame that they would do that.
Yeah, it's damage control.
They're trying so hard. Yeah, damage control. They've been in damage control mode. They've been on the heels for a couple of years now. And the best they can do is to try to make us look dumb. That's the best they can do. They haven't made any good counterfactual arguments to anything we've said. They just attack us. And I understand why. It's because it asks a lot of questions about all of their different experts and everything. But, I've even talked to people who never go into this area. And people who've debunked the moon landing never go further. So like James H. Fetzer, for example, he debunked the moon landing ad nauseum, destroyed it, sunk it. The moon landing was fake. You don't need to go any further than James Fetzer's book. So I said, what do you think about the ISS being fake? We can take all these resources that were directed at the moon and just look at the ISS. And honestly, he'd heard of it, but he never looked into it. And I'm thinking that's the main thing. When people start looking, they will see. Especially if you tell them what to look at. And I'm like, well, hey, look for green screens, augmented virtual reality, harnesses, and bubbles in space. And so I'll hit him up again in a few weeks and see if he's had enough time to research it. But to me, they've goofed up, and no amount of damage control can cover it up. In fact, I think they said they're no longer going to send people up to the ISS. And that's probably because they can't maintain the illusion. As consumer level video making capacities exceeds what they can do, it's going to look faker and faker as the years go by.
Yes, definitely, and it's gonna look faker and faker, and people are gonna be convinced more and more. They ain't gonna have to put a lot of work to it, because once they got you in this virtual reality of belief, anything goes. And when we was talking about that blue beam technology, I was bringing that up to say that's how they've been faking meteors for a long time. Man.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Yeah.
No, you're onto something.
Because if they can get enough planes to go across with these expensive light shows, but then start dropping real shit on us, killing us, hey, the government didn't do it. It was meteors attacked or aliens attacked, or, so, I think our own belief gonna work against us when they start attacking us. That's what you were saying too, basically. But that's a dangerous thing, man. Show you how much our belief can work against us. But
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna let you close it on off with the last statement here.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the main thing is I'm all for thinking and let thinking, think and let think. But we have to recognize that beliefs themselves divorce you from reality. And if we allow our reality to be completely scripted for us and defined for us by people who don't have our best interests, it can be used against us. So if we're not paying attention and they tell us what to think and how to think, we're going to react the way they tell us to react. It's why every time you have some type of light show, like on the 23rd of last December, Elon Musk sent one of his rockets up, and everybody assumed it was a UFO. It's like, why would you assume, or as an alien, why would you jump to the conclusion you're seeing something extraterrestrial? It's because they've set us up with all kinds of presuppositions and beliefs. And so I just think that right now we have to examine our beliefs and say, is this something that is true or something that somebody benefits for me to think is true? Whether it's global warming or the shape of the earth, all these things need to be questioned, like really as soon as possible, because a bunch of deceived people who are willing to believe a lot of dumb stuff, if they outnumber us, well, then they're going to define what comes next. If they can convince 95 or 99% of the population that we need to be protected from a UFO invasion, they'll pull one off. Like, to me, the fact that most people believe Starman is real says that the masses are probably going to accept lunar bases like very soon. We're going to have a movie of a bunch of dorks on the moon, and we're going to think, and people are going to believe it's real. So it's real versus fake, and if real doesn't stand up for real, the fake's going to win by default.
And
So that's all.
I'm telling you, it's more fake than real. So the few real we got to stand up twice as hard to make the numbers match. That's why I support what you're doing with the actions you take. And I want to ask you one more question before you get out of here. On behalf of me and the people, Donald Trump's Space Force. What you think about it, bro?
When I saw the Space Force thing, I think it's an opportunity for us to call out how ridiculous this thing is. But the fact that he pulled that off shows that there's no political saviors. Because the Space Force is part of the Jesuit religious program. And if there's more than enough evidence to have brought down the ISS on how fake it is and how global warming is fake just by calling out the organization NOAA, he hasn't done it. So Trump signing on to the Space Force is Trump complying with the goals of the space program, which is the Babylon mystery religion. So we don't need a political savior anyway. But if you had hopes that Trump was one, sorry, get rid of that.
Oh man, you'll be surprised that he's the first president that I've saw unite so many people of all. Man, even people in other nations saying how blessed we are to have Trump as president because he's so vocal. He bringing back the alpha male. It's so deep, man, that they saying that. And I'm going to let you go here, but you just said something so deep. We got to do another one of these about the Space Force and about some more stuff that I want to talk to you about too. Because, yeah, it's getting real deep. Like you said, what the fuck does he know about space to even be putting another budget in? It's so much we got to talk about, bro. But I know we got to go, man. I'm going to let the people go. And make sure y'all...
Very good. All right.
Mm-hmm. Hey, much
yeah, hey,
love,
thanks
man.
for having me on. Yeah, I'll keep a list of bullet points of things to go over. It's always constructive to talk to you. Has been since day one, and I always appreciate the fact that you had my back originally when I started to get a lot of flack for speaking on certain topics. But yeah, anybody wants to get on my mailing list, it's infiniteplainsociety.com. And definitely check out exploringagain.com to know more about this over the polls thing.
Most definitely, and I'm gonna do the same, brother. And I'm gonna always support the real, man. I think that one thing I'm gonna say, I know I keep saying I'm gonna let you go, but just to end on this positive note, I'm not in this community to shill call and shit like that anymore. I'm gonna do what I do to offer what I got to offer and support people that's doing what I feel like helps the movement, because so far what we're doing and what I see you doing is things that shills wouldn't do. That's why I'll get behind it, because I don't see nothing wrong with somebody saying, hey, let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's go check it out. I don't see the harm it can do. And I'm just looking forward to that. So yeah, man, everybody support that. The links to this is in the description. Exploringagain.com and a link to IPS new channel. Thanks for dropping through, bro. Email me and we can set up something in the future, man.
Sounds good. All right. Good talking to you. Thanks everyone for listening. Have a great day.
All right, bro. Thank all of y'all in the chat room. Before I get out of here, I will do some shout outs, man. Exploringagain.com. Exploringagain.com. Let's see what's going on. Let's support that. Look forward to more shows like this, man. Productive things. People taking actions. So you better believe any way I can support, I'm gonna do that. Shout out to Morgan Ellis, OSHA 06. My two sisters, much love to y'all. They came through to Vegas a while back and they actually got a chance to meet them. Some awesome spirits. Shout out and much love to y'all. Another big shout out to IPS. I'm going to support those who speak up against the powers that be. There's been a lot of talk about IPS, negative talk. I'm not going to iterate on it because it just was such a positive bill. But I will say, as adults, you can discern for yourself. And people, the conversation we just had is like conversations they don't want us having. So, like we said, it's deeper than it. Once we prove it's flat, now we got to start taking some kind of actions and force. And most people say that's radical, but I'm supporting that kind of radicalism. I'm built for that. I signed up to go the extra mile with it. So I think this is all good, man. And I think it shows networking and unity. I support Infinite Plane Society and the whole idea of the Infinite Plane. Y'all know that. So shout out to all of y'all in the chat room, and shout out to Shield Scanner, shout out to Adam Garriger, Robert Humphrey, shout out to my brother Back to Your Roots Herbs, and shout out to my brother Light Work. All right, Light Work, I ain't forgot about that song. I know I keep saying it. Trust me, I'm gonna pop up with it. You're gonna be like, he ain't forget about me though. He was later than a motherfucker, but here you go. I got you, bro. So, and yeah, shout out to Just Be Real, Spake Face, Flat Accord Music, Flat Earth Hippie Chick, Weed Man, J Analyze, Inquisitive Bunny, Everything's Love. Shout out to all of my people across the flat plane with your foot on government deception. Don't take it off. You need to press it down hard, okay? We're going to crush the motherfucking necks of deception. I love doing what I do, and I can't do it without y'all support. So I want to keep thanking you for that support. All of my Patreons, shout out to y'all. I love you guys. Everybody in that chat room out there that came through to view the show, even if you gave it a thumbs down, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for your view. We just want to be thankful. All right? That's my new motto, goddammit. Be thankful even for your haters. Shout out to Be Strong, my brother Ace McCloud, Black Trotter, Kenya, David Roker, PR Corey. Shout out to my brother Flat Earth Underdog. Shout out to Lady Legs, Sweet Tea. Most definitely, man. Shout out to my brother Fam G. TISC, Nemo Holes, what's good? Shout out to my brother LaShawn Lawrence. Shout out to my brother ICU. Yeah, man. Appreciate y'all love, man. Shout out to you, ICU. Another shout out to my brother Back to Your Roots. The brother been supporting what we do heavily. Got the show. Shout out to him, man. And I'm gonna be giving away some more flat power gear and some more crystals coming up. So make sure y'all stay tuned. I'm only gonna do it on this channel because that's the gear. The gear is flat power gear. So we're gonna give it away right here. We're gonna do it the right way. Shout out to Copacetic. Shout out to the HOTC and the brother Huey P and the brother Sir Drop. Shout out to them HOTC brothers. Shout out to Marilyn Brown, Donald Putnam. Shout out to Allegedly Dave. Allegedly Dave Murphy. Shout out to Teardrop Hall. That's my family right there all day. Much love, Teardrop. And True Jack in the motherfucking house. Karen Ramirez. Rackbusters. Shout out to y'all, okay? Appreciate every last one of y'all from stopping by. And another shout out to Morgan Ellis, man. And to the sister OSHA. I'm going to let y'all get up out of here. I see you late, Easy. I'm going to get on up out of here, man. Stay tuned so y'all can, win some crystal gifts. I'm going to give out a lot of stuff that way more people can have a chance to win some. Shout out to Goddess Witch Bella in the motherfucking house. Flat power, my sister. I'm going to let y'all get up out of here. It's been a 3-hour show. Again, man, subscribe to Infinite Plane Society by getting in the video description. Peace and much love, guys.